Chapter 2867. Zi Chen was well aware of what would happen if the tree spirit's heart was exposed. There would be no peace in this place. However, Jino didn't seem to be worried at all. He even seemed to be looking forward to it. Zi Chen raised his head and looked up. There were already fruits there, but the number was far less than that of the ancient tree king. Unlike the ancient tree king, Jino was in the world of the gods. There were plenty of enemies in this world. He could decompose the corpses of his enemies to grow, unlike the ancient tree king, who relied on the passage of time to grow. Now that the tree spirit's heart was exposed, there would naturally be an endless stream of enemies. This was a great opportunity for him to grow. The Mist Shadow King clearly understood what Jino meant. His expression fluctuated. Relatively speaking, he was more fond of fighting than Jino. If the Mist Shadow wanted to grow quickly, he needed to constantly fight to grow the Shadow Soul fruit. Sensing their emotions, Zi Chen smiled and said, "Then let's wait. Since the God Realm doesn't want us to develop peacefully, we'll develop in battle." In the core divine city, the ranking of generals, which had changed only a few months ago, was shaken again today. Many people hurried over to see what was going on. Had someone been promoted and left the ranking? The top ranking remained unchanged. What had changed was the lower ranking. Divine General Goldenman, who had dropped one place, had completely disappeared from the ranking. There was only one possibility in this situation. Divine General Goldenman was dead. This news would quickly spread throughout the God Realm. 2 divine generals had been killed in such a short time. Some people could already see that the peaceful God Realm was about to fall into turmoil. Toby City was the largest trading center in the vicinity. Many gods gathered here. It was bustling with activity every day. In the past few days, the city had become even livelier. The number of people increased every day. This was because there was news about the tree spirit's heart in the city. The tree spirit's heart was very useful to divine generals. It could increase their control over power and was very expensive. After this news spread, it naturally attracted many divine generals. Many divine envoys were also eager to give it a try. This news was accurate because there were already many merchants who couldn't wait to buy some tree spirits' hearts. They had already offered a very high price in advance. The news quickly spread, causing a huge commotion. All kinds of experts rushed over. Toby City once again attracted a lot of attention, attracting the attention of some people. In the conference room, Divine General Luo Wei was the last to arrive. Ever since the previous incident, his career in the government had reached its peak. It was impossible for him to go any further. However, he was very satisfied with his current life. Although he no longer had an official career, he had gained a lot. Every once in a while, Toby City's trading house would give him a large amount of dividends. He used these dividends to exchange for the cultivation resources he needed. Recently, his realm had improved very quickly, and he had already reached level 5. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Luo Wei walked to the back and sat down lazily. The crowd was not surprised and did not say anything. The old man in the lead smiled and asked, "Luo Wei, do you know that Zi Chen is back?" He was the biggest steward here and had served the government for many years. However, due to his limited aptitude, he was only at level 6. "I heard," Luo Wei said indifferently, "but Lord Zi Chen has been very busy recently, so I haven't seen him yet." As members of the government, the speed at which they received the news was naturally much faster than the others. When they heard that Zi Chen had returned, they were shocked to hear that Zi Chen had become a divine general. However, they were relatively calm. After all, they were part of the government, and Zi Chen was only at level 8. Perhaps his ranking was somewhat exaggerated. However, after hearing that Han Jin had died, they could no longer remain calm. This not only proved that Zi Chen had the battle prowess of a divine general, but also the news about tree spirits' hearts. As such, their minds became active, and this meeting was held. "What's the purpose of this meeting?" Luo Wei asked. "Have you heard about the tree spirits' hearts?" the old man asked. Luo Wei nodded. It's said that the tree spirits' hearts are with Zi Chen. Many people have already gathered in Toby City. The reason I called you here is to ask Zi Chen if he's willing to sell the tree spirit's hearts to us first. Of course, the price is negotiable. The tree spirit heart was one of the resources Zi Chen had given them, and they had refined those things before. They knew how useful and valuable they were, so they naturally wanted to get a share of the loot. Luo Wei knew what they were thinking and felt disdain. He said, "Lord Zi Chen is very busy. I can barely see him." The old man smiled and said, "If you can't see him, then go find him. I'm sure Zi Chen will be willing to see you. You can pass on our message. I'm sure Zi Chen will understand our difficulties. Of course, we don't want too many tree spirits' hearts, just 60%. The price is negotiable, as long as it's within a reasonable range." Luo Wei felt even more disdain, but he didn't say anything this time. He felt that something was wrong. In the end, Luo Wei didn't give a definite answer. He left after the meeting. In a short time, a group of people had gathered in Tobi City. There were 9th-level emissaries and other divine generals. They began to move 1,000,000 miles away. When Luo Wei came to Tobi City, the first group had already left. He went to find Jolina. Tobi City wasn't in charge. It was only in name at most. He told Jolina about the intentions of the people in the meeting. Jolina sneered. "Their attitude seems a bit strange. What do they mean?" Luo Wei didn't understand. "What else?" "Of course, they want a share of the profits." Jolina said, "They're really greedy." "Then what should we do?" Luo Wei asked. "Of course not. Those ancient trees are the city's defense. They're not resources in their eyes. I think they're being too greedy by setting their sights on this place." After that, Jolina went to find Zi Chen and told him the government's intentions. Zi Chen didn't have much contact with the government. The first time was when the exchange was set up. At that time, Luo Wei was the one in charge. It could be considered a mutual benefit. The second time was when the exchange was set up in Ben Sen Lu City. The government didn't hesitate to abandon Tobi City. Luo Wei also took the opportunity to help him by the exchange. These two times could be considered friendly. But on the battlefield, he had a different understanding of the government. In order to get the shadow spirit fruit, they directly accused him of treason. Although everyone died in the end, they still represented the government. Was there any follow-up to this matter? Or did these people say that because they knew what happened on the battlefield, they wanted to blackmail him? Although he didn't understand what these people meant, he still made the same decision as Jolina. He didn't care about anything first. He would deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. The first group of enemies came. There were a lot of them. After arriving, they didn't rush into the forest. Instead, they attacked the outermost ancient trees. These ancient trees began to fight back, but the results weren't ideal. On the first day, they lost as many as 100 ancient trees, indicating that they had lost 100 tree spirit hearts. This made them extremely excited. Some people immediately chose to retreat. They wanted to exchange the tree spirit hearts they had obtained. At the same time, they wanted to bring back the latest news. On the second day, their harvest was even greater. Although the ancient trees were very powerful, they kept attacking from the outermost area. After killing one ancient tree, they went to kill a second one. Of course, during this period, they suffered casualties. Relatively speaking, the casualties were within an acceptable range. This situation lasted for 5 days. On the 6th day, a large number of ancient trees suddenly disappeared. This made everyone extremely shocked. Why did the ancient trees disappear overnight? Such a change made them not dare to go deeper. Thus, they patiently observed for 2 days. During these 2 days, no other dangers occurred. On the 3rd day, they launched another attack, still at the outermost area. However, this time around, the ancient trees that had disappeared earlier suddenly reappeared. The surrounding divine race members were all enveloped by the ancient trees. What followed was a massacre. Within the ancient trees, there was still fog drifting. The misty shadow that had been enduring for a few days also launched an attack. There were still some people in the outermost area that the ancient trees could not reach. These people saw that the situation was not good and immediately retreated. There were also some who prepared to leave to report the changes. From the corner of their eyes, they saw white fog surging nearby. This made them feel very surprised. Just as they were wondering why there was fog in the middle of the day, the fog behind them surged and turned into fog shadows. At the beginning, those who came were all low-level divine generals. The highest was only level 3. To these misty shadow, their fighting strength was too weak. Unsurprisingly, everyone who came here was slaughtered. No one was able to leave, and no news spread. When the new batch of divine race members arrived and found that there was no one alive, they were very shocked. Then, this news spread, causing a commotion. But not only did this not make them feel fear, more divine race members arrived. Among them, there were even many high-level divine race members. Ben Senlu and the other children of gods also finally brought the first batch of experts. They were all true experts, and each of them was a divine general. Many of them came from the battlefield. The tree spirit's heart was a battlefield resource, and a resource that could only be found in the Black Order battlefield. Now that it had appeared in the divine race, it was extremely attractive to them. After arriving, they did not hesitate and directly charged into the forest. Ancient trees were cut down one after another. They obtained many tree spirits' hearts. It could be said that they had broken through the seal. Chapter 2868. Miserable screams came from the forest, and the fog churned, but no one knew what was going on. The ancient tree blotted out the sky, enveloping everything. Ben Senlu and the other children of God stood outside, not entering. Hearing these screams, they frowned. Sina said, "This place really is strange." Ben Senlu said, "So what? As long as we attack from the outside, there will be a day when we destroy this forest." Then, his eyes flashed coldly, "Just treat this place as a weapon refinement ground." "Weapon refinement ground?" Sina's expression changed. "What are you planning to do?" Ben Senlu pointed to the depths. "I heard some rumors. This guy Zi Chen offended someone he shouldn't have. If we don't handle it well, a battle will break out. If we want to get a share of the pie, we naturally need a powerful team. My people are already on the way, do as you please." "You asked your father for people?" Xin Lin asked. Ben Senlu smiled, "There's no need. When I was born, I already had people specially trained. The only thing missing now is some actual combat experience." Actually, the others also had people, including Xin Lin. However, hers was not prepared by her godfather, but by her family. As members of the god race, these children of gods had to establish their own forces, and those people were prepared for war. War was the foundation of the god realm. But in preparation, they would also fight against the celestial race, not the god race. Without a doubt, Zi Chen was an exception. Groups of gods came, and some obtained tree spirits' hearts, while others died. Overall, Zi Chen's side gained more. The misty shadow and the ancient tree obtained the corpses to promote their own growth. Tyrant and the others were still in seclusion, and they would only come out after reaching rank 9. Zhou Lina brought the new alchemy books to the city and gave them to Zi Chen. Recently, there have been some obstacles. These books were easy to obtain before, but now it's a bit difficult. If you need them urgently, I'll send people to other trading cities to buy them. These obstacles were clearly from the government, because Zi Chen had not agreed to their requests. Zi Chen said, "Not at the moment." The limitless pill cauldron now had a certain understanding of the god realm. Next, it would refine new pills based on the characteristics of those pills. He believed that no one in the divine realm could compare with Cauldron Spirit when it came to refining medicines. Zhou Lina didn't say much and quickly left again. Recently, due to the suppression of the official forces, the trade city had indeed been somewhat affected. However, its popularity was much higher than before. They were all here for the tree spirit's heart. "Do you need me to go back?" Yi Qian was leaning against the door. She was wearing a tight-fitting dress that outlined her beautiful curves. Zi Chen shook his head and said, "There's no need. If I have to trouble the sky god for such a small matter, how could the sky god trust me with you?" Yi Qian walked to Zi Chen's side and said worriedly, "But this time, it seems a little unusual." Zi Chen said, counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. Although we haven't been able to cultivate any powerful combatants, we have the mother nest, Giano's ancient tree, and the misty shadow. We can protect ourselves under such circumstances. Moreover, fighting is always the fastest way to grow. If we need to grow quickly, we need to keep fighting. The suppression from the government was only one reason. Another reason was that they were too weak. After dealing with these trivial matters, Zichen decided to go into seclusion to cultivate. At the encampment of the official forces, a group of people once again gathered. This time, Luo Wei wasn't with them. It seems that Zichen is determined not to give in this time, said a middle-aged man. Then what are we waiting for? Let's suppress them and turn Toby City into a wasteland, said another person. Toby City still belongs to the goddess. If we go overboard, I'm afraid the sky god will be displeased. Will the sky god be displeased over such a small matter? Perhaps not in other matters, but everyone in the divine realm knows how much the sky god dotes on the goddess. Everyone sank into silence. In the past, the divine race doted on the son of the sky god. Ben Senlu was very famous. However, with the appearance of the goddess Yi Qian, everyone knew that the pagoda battle god doted on him. Although this matter was targeted at Zichen, it was inevitable that the goddess would lose some benefits. Would the sky god be angry? Moreover, everyone knew that Zichen was the future son-in-law of the pagoda battle god. During this time, the old man was silent. After everyone fell silent, he said, "Go and call Luo Wei over. Tell him to pass on a message to Zichen. This time, he must give in the benefits. Otherwise, we won't be able to handle this matter. What if he's not willing? Are we going to announce that Toby City is no longer under our control?" Someone said. The old man said, "That's too extreme. Moreover, this is no longer a legitimate competition. However, their city hasn't been reported to us, right?" Everyone understood the old man's meaning and nodded. This way, everything would be done according to the rules. Even if the sky god knew, he wouldn't be able to say anything. If Zichen is destroyed, will there be trouble? Someone asked worriedly. Even if there is trouble, we don't have to deal with it. Someone will deal with it. Luo Wei arrived at Toby City and went to find Jolina directly. He seemed to be in a hurry. Normally, the more lively the city was, the happier he would be. This meant an endless supply of resources. However, it was different this time. Looking at these people, he was very worried. Because these people weren't just here to buy resources. They were here to attack the goddess world. "I need to see my lord." After seeing Jolina, Luo Wei said directly. Luo Wei was definitely one of them. He sold the land to Toby City at cost price. This made Toby City earn a lot. "Come with me." Jolina led Luo Wei to the secret teleportation array. With a flash of light, they arrived at the city. Luo Wei was shocked to see Giano again. He didn't expect that there would be a teleportation array here. Moreover, compared to last time, Giano looked very different. There were many fruits on it, shining brightly. When Luo Wei saw Zichen, he reported to his superiors. Obviously, he was very worried. "My lord, they seem to be serious this time. What should we do?" Zichen smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, I have my own plans. When you go back, say that you didn't see me. Also, tell them that I won't see anyone." "Okay." Luo Wei nodded. Seeing the smile on Zichen's face, he was relieved. A few days later, a piece of shocking news spread. A land of opportunity was found 1,000,000 miles away from Toby City. The opportunities there could only be found in the Black Order battlefield. The tree spirit's heart it produced was very useful for divine generals of the 6th and 7th rank. This news spread extremely quickly and caused a sensation. When the high-ranking divine generals heard this news, they immediately headed for Toby City. Toby City became the gathering place for divine generals. They gathered here and formed groups to travel 1,000,000 miles away. When they arrived, they saw a large number of ancient trees. A great war broke out. There were casualties every day. Zichen never appeared, and no one else did either. It was as if these people were allowed to do whatever they wanted. Once a powerful existence that could slaughter the ancient trees appeared, he would definitely not be able to live for more than 3 days. He would be killed one day. This situation lasted for a year. Both sides suffered losses, and the ancient forest seemed to have shrunk. In this 1 year, many people had obtained great gains. More and more divine generals came, not only from the 10th domain, but also from other domains. The area of the ancient trees was greatly reduced. When the 10th year came, it had shrunk by a third. In these 10 years, the number of ancient trees that everyone obtained was definitely in the hundreds of thousands. However, even after 10 whole years, they were still unable to destroy this forest. This caused some people to feel extremely shocked. However, they were very happy to see this. Everything was just as Ben Senlu said, they would treat it as refining weapons. In the past 10 years, quite a number of large-scale troops had appeared. They were well trained, and like an army, they began to slowly advance. Outside Yiqian's city, white fog shrouded it. It was abnormally dense and almost impossible to disperse. After 10 whole years of fighting, the fog killed too many lives. Although the level of these lives couldn't be compared to the battlefield, they had the advantage in numbers. Therefore, they improved a lot in these 10 years. However, the improvement was even greater in the city. Jiano's body became abnormally strong, and the tree was filled with shining fruits. The number of fruits was almost on par with the ancient tree king. The battle continued for another 10 years, and half of the ancient trees were lost. During these 20 years, the divine generals who came to hunt the ancient trees and were still alive also gained a lot. During this time, the armies brought by the sons of gods also gained a lot. On this day, Zichen walked out of seclusion. The Fog Shadow King appeared beside him. Zichen said, "You can attack now." The Fog Shadow King nodded and quickly disappeared. On this night, white fog floated out from the depths. This white fog passed through the sea of trees and headed for the divine race outside. In these 20 years, the fog shadow that had never appeared in front of people appeared this time. In the darkness, the white fog shrouded, alarming many people who were cultivating. Next, sword light flashed, and the sound of weapons cutting into bodies was constantly heard. This was a night of slaughter, and also a feast for the fog shadow. After suppressing them for 20 years and allowing them to grow for 20 years, tonight was the time to reap the harvest. Screams of agony rang out incessantly, as did cries of terror. "Ghost, there are ghosts." To them, the fog shadow that couldn't be killed was really like a ghost. The white fog shrouded the world, and the fog shadow kept appearing. Sometimes, there were giant crocodiles rushing out from the ground. Announcement: last 6 days of the site-wide monthly subscription. Don't miss it. Android version, download, read offline without ads. Book list, in the name of the people's similar recommendation iPhone version, new client download and VIP Chapter 0. Chapter 2869. Within the rolling white fog, it was the tragic scene of the divine realm. Ben Senlu and the others stood outside, their bodies shining with divine light. Looking at the rolling white fog ahead, their hearts were bleeding. The army that they had nurtured for 20 years, who knew how many battles they had gone through, was destroyed just like that. Less than 100 of them had survived. "Zichen, you and I cannot live under the same sky," Ben Senlu shouted ahead, his voice filled with hatred. His voice echoed around, but it was quickly drowned out by screams. He left. There were still people inside who had not died, but he did not have the guts to go in and save them. Xin Lin and the others also left. This time, they left with hatred, because their losses were too great. So great that even if they killed Zichen, they would not be satisfied. With the misty shadow moving out, the battle did not last long. When the fog dissipated, there was nothing on the ground other than blood. Zichen heard Ben Senlu's angry roar, but he was indifferent. The misty shadow's secret was exposed at this moment, it would definitely cause a commotion, and there would be even more trouble coming. But he was already prepared to welcome all the trouble. The next day, the news spread in Toby City. Almost all the forces that came were wiped out, less than 1/10 of them survived. The entire city was in an uproar, it was very shocking. Those were many divine generals, which was completely different from the scene 20 years ago. They were all wiped out. Damn it. A beautifully crafted table broke, and a tea set fell to the ground with a clattering sound. The old man with the most authority in the government was trembling in anger. Chen was not willing to cooperate time and time again. They naturally had to think of other ways, such as mobilizing their own private army. In these 20 years, their gains were greater every year, and their investment naturally increased. But this time, everything was gone. That was years of hard work. Chen, I will not let you go, the old man said angrily. There were other people standing around. Their faces were also ugly, as they were also part of the government. They naturally had a share. What should we do now? One of them said, should we attack? Or should we expel Toby City? No need. This matter would naturally be arranged by the higher-ups. It's just that the resources given to Toby City have to be reduced. Although the old man was furious, he did not lose his mind. The details of the complete annihilation spread. Many people saw the white fog, and within the white fog, there was an unkillable existence. This news quickly spread as well, bringing a great deal of shock to those who were observant. It's the misty shadow. He really did bring the misty shadow out from the battlefield. Many people knew about the misty shadow's secret. After 20 years of fighting in the outer perimeter, the past few days had been strangely peaceful. It was unknown if those people were frightened by the misty shadow. The forest still hadn't grown, and the harvest of the past few years had been transferred to Giano. Giano needed to advance. After a few more days of peace, Chen finally waited for an enemy, but it was not an enemy from the god race, but from the heaven race. Many creatures from the alternate spacetime approached another city, and there were many of them. That used to be Chen's city. Now, it was Wuji's city, named after Wuji. Chen stepped into the teleportation array and arrived at the city. In this city, there was also a towering ancient tree. It was an existence similar to Giano, and was under Giano's control. This city was mainly used for trials, and it led to several trial grounds. Those trial grounds were all opened by the mother nest. When Chen arrived, several thousand people had already gathered in the city. These people all came from the life stars, and after several decades of growth, they had all reached the divine envoy realm. When these people saw Chen appear, they called him Lord in unison, and their expressions were very respectful. Wuji was at the front of the group. He was a rank 6 general. Let's go out and take a look, Wuji said after seeing Chen arrive. Chen nodded and left with Wuji. As they flew out of the city, there was still a white fog rolling. In the past few decades, this place had not been attacked by the god race, but there were battles every day. This was because there were many creatures from another spacetime in this area. Whether it was the ancient tree or the fog, they were all growing. After arriving at the forest, Chen saw a stretch of black lines. The black lines stretched endlessly, and they were all creatures from another spacetime. He spread out his spiritual sense, and his calm expression changed. These creatures from another spacetime were almost endless. There were all kinds of levels among them, but the low-level ones were the most numerous. So far, Chen's spiritual sense had not discovered the existence of the divine generals of the Celestials. He frowned. Wuji obviously also noticed this scene and said, "It seems that they want to use numbers to gain an advantage." Chen nodded. He had controlled a mother nest, so he naturally knew what those low-level creatures from another spacetime meant to the mother nest. They meant that no matter how many of them died, the mother nest would not care. There would only be more of them the next day. This was also why, for so many years, the god race had been fighting with the Celestials, but there were still so many creatures from another spacetime. It was impossible to kill them all. The scene in front of him clearly showed that a general-level mother nest was controlling other mother nests and starting to use cannon fodder to attack. Even if these ancient trees were very strong and could kill a large number of them at once, these creatures from another spacetime would be enough for them to kill for a long time. "It's time for our people to move out," Wuji said. Chen nodded. Soldiers were trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. Those creatures from the life stars should also experience the baptism of war. They returned to the city. Chen looked at Tree Spirit and said, You must hold on, sir, don't worry. These low-level creatures will die no matter how many of them come. I need to grow quickly, and they are my opportunity, Tree Spirit said confidently. Chen nodded slightly and did not discourage him. Perhaps when he saw the number of creatures from another spacetime, he would not think so. Fortunately, there was still fog here. He was very glad that he brought back so many fog shadows this time. After that, Chen looked at the divine envoys who were already on guard and said, "Next, you will participate in the battle. This battle will be different from the trial. After being seriously injured, there will be no place to rest. If you feel that something is wrong, immediately retreat. You must be careful." These people began to walk out of the city and then merged into the forest. This time, they were mainly cooperating with the ancient trees and fog shadows. They were not the main force. This could also be considered another form of training. As the black lines approached, they encountered the forest. Amidst the constant whistling, they rushed into the forest. There was no pause or hesitation, and they did not even attack. They just rushed forward. The ancient trees on the periphery launched an attack. Branches extended and entangled one creature from another spacetime, but even more creatures from another spacetime rushed over, stepping on the former's bodies and rushing deeper into the forest. In the blink of an eye, the trees were filled with creatures from another spacetime. With such a large number, the ancient trees did not need to deliberately search for a target. As long as the branches twisted, they could find a group of targets. After they launched their attacks, many creatures from another spacetime used them to jump forward. The ancient trees could no longer be seen. All that could be seen were the creatures from another spacetime. As they went deeper, each one of them attacked. Even if they only left a scratch on the ancient trees, the countless attacks added up to an unimaginable amount of power. The first batch of ancient trees that were submerged by the creatures from another spacetime quickly disappeared. The second batch of ancient trees directly raised their defenses before attacking. This made the situation much better. However, there were simply too many creatures from another spacetime behind them. Seeing this, Chen remained silent. He had the ability to stop them, but he did not. This was war, so he needed to adapt. After losing several batches of ancient trees, the tree spirits immediately changed their strategy. After defending, they no longer entangled the creatures from another spacetime and directly attacked. Their attacks transformed into sharp blades that sliced forward. Wherever the hunting blades passed, hundreds of spacetime creatures would be sliced in half. Seeing this, Chen nodded. Right now, killing was the most important thing, so he could put the corpses aside. The branches of the ancient trees all turned into sharp blades that continuously danced and spun like killing machines, reaping life after life. The creatures from another spacetime advanced wave after wave, not caring about the lives of their companions. Some of them even devoured their companions' bodies along the way. They stepped on the corpses and continued to charge forward, forcefully entering the depths. The ancient trees on the outside were gradually covered by corpses. In this situation, they could only give up on fighting and deal with the corpses. This was an extremely shocking scene. The advantage in numbers was simply too terrifying. At this time, Chen was even a little worried that the mist would be unable to attack the moment it appeared and be squeezed by the creatures from the other spacetime before it could even attack. Fortunately, this worry was unnecessary. Because the fog was in the depths, if the creatures from another spacetime wanted to charge in, they would definitely suffer heavy losses. At that time, there would not be so many of them. The large-scale attack here was clearly not a coincidence. Just as this area was being attacked, there were also many creatures from another spacetime advancing towards Yichen's city. After 20 years of fighting, 2/3 of the ancient trees outside Yichen's city had been lost. In this situation, the creatures from another spacetime relied on numbers to attack, which would undoubtedly pose a threat to the city. Does this count as starting the war early? Chen looked at the black line in front of him, a cold light flashing in his eyes. He had pushed into the city, so he naturally knew the reason for this. Seeing that the lifestyle was not welcomed, he had been betrayed just like that. These creatures from another spacetime rushed into the forest, but it was different from the previous city. The ancient trees outside the city were stronger, and even the main force of the fog was here. Since the secret had been exposed, there was no need to hide it anymore. The ground became a vortex, and the creatures from another spacetime were sucked into the vortex. There was no need for superb skills because these creatures from another spacetime only knew how to charge forward. Chapter 2870. The content of the notice was recruitment. The general idea was that the city was under attack, and they were recruiting some experts to fight for them. They would be rewarded handsomely during the period. The city was boiling. Everyone clapped and cheered, thinking that this was karma. So many people died. Is this karma? It must be karma. So many divine generals, so many armies died just like that. Haha, karma is coming. Recruiting. Who will go? I'm afraid only idiots will go. The city was abuzz with discussions. Everyone was excited, taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. Jolena heard the discussions in the city, but she wasn't moved. She had expected this scene. Moreover, this wasn't a real recruitment. It was just a test. Those who shouted that it was karma didn't know that it was intentional. How could there be so much karma in this world? Jolena waited for 7 days, but no one came to sign up. If there were only a few people, it would be normal because it was very dangerous. However, no one came, which was obviously abnormal. After all, the reward they were offering was considerable. Most importantly, the city was becoming more and more popular. Many divine generals had come to the city. Then what was their goal? The two cities were connected by a teleport formation, so Zichen could get first-hand information. The battle outside was still going on. With the main force of the Misty Shadow Army here, it was unrealistic for the creatures from the other space to rush in. This time, the giant crocodile played the biggest role. Creatures from the other space kept falling into the trap. During this period, even the Misty Shadow King had joined the battle. Because there were too many corpses, he couldn't collect them all. At this moment, he felt lucky to have followed Zichen out. In just 20 years, he had accumulated more than hundreds of thousands of years on the battlefield. After all, on the battlefield, he needed many years to kill a group of experts, and the number was only a few hundred. Although the quality of the enemies was lower than heaven and earth, they won in terms of quantity. It could be said that it was countless times more than before. On the king tree that Giano had turned into, hundreds of fruits grew every day. This battlefield had become the best fertile land for them to grow. Time. Now, what Zichen needed was time. Unfortunately, this world didn't have something like the time castle, and the time castle on the Life Star couldn't help the progenitor realm experts accelerate. The battle was still going on. A battle of this level was completely under control. There were more and more immortal generals in Toby City, making the city more and more boisterous. However, Jolena and the others were not happy at all. The resources in the trading city had obviously decreased. It was obvious that the officials were deliberately suppressing them. The only fortunate thing was that these divine generals hadn't joined the battle yet. The battle lasted for a month. During this month, there was an endless stream of creatures from another dimension attacking, causing the ancient forest outside the two cities to seem to have suffered considerable losses. However, this was only what it looked like on the surface. In reality, the ancient trees and misty shadow in the two cities had gained a lot, so much so that they could make up for these losses. On this day, Zichen sensed a powerful aura outside the city. After that aura appeared, it stopped and didn't go any deeper. He left the city and flew to the outside world. A person was standing in the air outside the forest. He was wearing a dazzling general armor. He was a divine general. At this moment, Zichen couldn't see the other party's ranking, but he could sense from his aura that this was a divine general who posed a threat to him. "My name is Ka-Tur." The ranked godly general volunteered. Zichen said. He wasn't familiar with this name, so he wasn't surprised. If some people were to hear this name, they would definitely be shocked. Ka-Tur was ranked 83rd on the ranking of generals. "This time, I've come as a representative of the government. I have two objectives," Divine General Ka-Tur said. "Please speak." Zichen looked at him. "The first is to take the Misty Shadow back." The second is to buy all the tree spirit hearts here. You can name the price. Ka Tuor said directly, not beating around the bush. Chen smiled faintly and said, "Do you think that's possible?" "Nothing is impossible. The misty shadow is of great significance, and it's a resource of the government. These tree spirit hearts are also of great use to the government." Ka Tuor said, "You should have realized during this time that there are some things that you can't touch, because they're beyond the scope of your abilities." Chen said indifferently, "Of course I saw it. You wanted my things, but I didn't agree. In the end, so many creatures from another dimension came. Since you keep saying that these things belong to the government, what does the government want them for? To fight against the creatures from another dimension? Of course. Research them and then create even more experts to deal with the creatures from another dimension and return peace to the God realm," Ka Tuor said. Chen said coldly, "But I don't see your determination to deal with the creatures from another dimension. Instead, I see you using them to deal with me. I wonder if your goal is for your own benefit or to fight the creatures from another dimension." "Of course it's to fight," Ka Tuor said in a deep voice. Chen said, "Since it's to fight, why should I give it to you? Is this not a fight? You see, we only have 2 small cities, but we've taken more than half of the danger for the 10th domain. So you don't agree?" Ka Tuor's face turned cold. "When you used the creatures from another dimension to threaten me, there was no room for negotiation." Chen said, "Please go back and don't come again. Not to mention a divine general, even a divine king wouldn't be able to do anything." Ka Tuor's face turned ugly. Clearly, Chen was rejecting him directly. Chen said with a smile, "Of course, I don't think the divine king has the guts to come here and threaten me. Even if it's to discuss, I don't think the divine king would dare to come." Compared to Ka Tuor, Chen's words were the real threat. They had set their sights on this area for several decades. This time, a creature from another spacetime had arrived. Although all of this could be explained away by the fact that Yi Qian's city was not under the jurisdiction of the God realm because it was not registered, if a God King came, everything would be different. The Pagoda Battle God didn't say anything about this, but that didn't mean he didn't care. As one of the 9 great gods, sometimes there was no need for them to show up. Someone else would take care of everything. If a divine king really came here, no matter what the divine king said, this divine king would anger some people. "You're on your own." Ka Tuor snorted and turned to leave. Chen saw Ka Tuor's ranking. He was ranked 83, which was 20 places higher than him. While the two of them were talking, the battle in the forest continued. There were still creatures from another dimension in their line of sight, but they didn't attack the two of them. Chen returned to the city. This time, he rejected the government. He believed that this city would face a bigger test. Chapter 2871. The battle was still going on, and no one knew when it would end. Chen returned to the city and did not continue his seclusion. He began to condense the law skin according to the method that Shadowless taught him. He had many law skins on him, so he could use them to practice. After that divine general returned to the city, no one else came. Chen's attitude was very clear. He did not even care about the divine general, let alone the others. As for the divine king, they really did not have the guts to touch his bottom line, even though there was definitely a divine king behind these people. Yi Qian was already in seclusion, so she did not need to participate in the battle here. She could only improve her strength as soon as possible. Under Chen's instructions, Jiano deliberately reduced the number of ancient trees under his control, which could also create the illusion that they were not a match for him. In Everlasting City, the battle was still going on. Everlasting City was overseen by Everlasting. Every half a month or a month, some trial takers from Life Stars would be sent here to train. They were still very weak, so they would enter the trial ground. This battle lasted for 5 years, and it had been 25 years since Chen returned. An endless stream of spacetime creatures had been attacking for 5 years, and the effect was much better than that of the divine generals. At this time, the forest was less than 20 li, and the towering ancient tree king in the city was clearly visible. This news quickly spread throughout Toby City, and was heard by a few people. They were very satisfied with this news. Toby City's resources were limited, and although it was still very popular, many benefits were taken away by Ben Sen City. In the past few years, Luo Wei had been trying to obtain resources through other channels. After all, the official factions were divided into many factions. However, all the factions seemed to have their own considerations, and did not think highly of Zichen, even if Zichen had a goddess behind him. If this was the ninth heaven of the Tower Battle God, this problem would naturally not appear, but this was not the ninth heaven, but the 10th heaven. Strictly speaking, many factions here did not buy the Tower Battle God's account. Seeing that victory was in sight, the number of space-time creatures increased, and the number of powerhouses among them increased by several levels. Obviously, they wanted to take down the city in one go as soon as possible. The forest was also very cooperative, and the speed of its destruction increased significantly. However, it was only relatively faster. During this period of time, the frequency of the counterattacks of the Misty Shadow and the Ancient Tree also increased. Just like that, the battle continued for another 5 years. At this time, they were less than 5 miles away from the city. The battle lasted for 30 years. During this time, the Misty Shadow and the Ancient Tree obtained countless resources. At this time, the King Ancient Tree that Jono had transformed into had many more ancient trees than the Ancient Tree King back then. It was almost densely packed. The number of Misty Phantoms had also increased by a lot, and their levels had also increased significantly. Apart from that, 30 years was enough time for many things to happen quickly. For example, those who obtained resources and had outstanding talents would have their battle prowess greatly increased, and their realms would also increase accordingly. At the same time, Zichen, who had been trying the path of condensation for 10 years, had also made significant progress in the path of Rule Shadowskin. After familiarizing himself with the refining method of Level 7 and Level 8 Rule Shadowskins, he began to attempt to condense Level 9 Rule Shadowskins. When the 31st year arrived, Zichen successfully condensed a Level 9 Rule Shadowskin. The Level 9 Rule Shadowskin was almost invisible, and could only be seen with special rules. At this time, Zichen was holding it in his hand, and it could not be seen with the naked eye. At this time, he came out of seclusion and came to the city. He saw the monk in the city holding a light shield in his hand, looking ahead proudly. Zhong Haotian stood there, holding 2 thorns in his hand, his expression cold. "Hihi, I already said that you can't break my defense." The monk smiled proudly and said, "If you want to defeat me, you have to at least advance another level to reach level 9. Oh no, you have to become a divine king. You're too arrogant." The devil ape said. The monk said proudly, "Arrogant? Lord Zeng doesn't think so. This is confidence. Why don't the 2 of you come at me together, or rather, all of you come at me together? If you have the ability, don't use this turtle shell. I can beat you down alone." The devil ape said disdainfully. "This is a turtle shell. It's a shield, okay? It's known as the strongest defense in the world. Do you understand?" The monk said unhappily, "Even if I don't use the shield, devil ape, you can't beat Lord Zeng." The few of them ignored the monk and looked at Zichen, who was walking out. No one spoke, and the monk felt bored. When he turned around and saw Zichen, his eyes brightened and said, "Zichen, let's spar." Zichen glanced at the monk and did not respond to him. "If you don't agree, I'll go out and fight," the monk said. "You'll have a lot to fight in the future." Zichen looked at the crowd. At this time, everyone's strength had increased to level 8, and their combat strength had obviously improved. These people were no doubt the main force of the Life Star. "This is for you." Zichen took out the Rule Shadowskin and handed it to Zhong Haotian. "Zichen, are you here to be funny? You don't have anything in your hand." The monk mocked. Zhong Haotian reached out and touched the Rule Shadowskin. A strange light flashed in his eyes. "Refine it and see the effect," Zichen said. Zhong Haotian nodded. Then, a light flashed and his figure disappeared. Where did he go? Seeing Zhong Haotian disappear, the others spread out their spiritual senses, but they couldn't sense his existence. "It's just a small trick." The monk said, "It's no different from before." The expressions of the people around them changed. "What? Did I say something wrong? The monk found that everyone was looking at him. Of course not. Zhong Haotian's voice came from behind the monk. The monk's face changed. He immediately turned around and stared at Zhong Haotian. When did you appear? When you just opened your mouth, Zhong Haotian said. A rare smile appeared on his cold face. How is it? Zi Chen looked at Zhong Haotian. Very satisfied. Combined with my stealth technique, it can be called true stealth, Zhong Haotian said with satisfaction. Zi Chen nodded and said, that can't be better. Then, he looked up at Jiano and said, Jiano, it's done. Jiano's figure appeared in the ancient tree. He nodded at Zi Chen. The next moment, a tremor came from outside the city. Ancient trees began to grow on the ground. The ancient trees grew very quickly. They grew into a large area. The original ancient trees died, but the roots were still there. At this moment, ancient trees grew on all the roots. It could be said that in just a few breaths of time, the forest that had disappeared appeared again. Following that, in the outermost area, ancient trees continued to grow, and they continued to extend and expand. Compared to 30 years ago, the ancient trees' range was larger, and the ancient trees' attack power was more powerful. Within this area, countless creatures from another dimension were slaughtered in an instant. The same scene appeared in the Everlasting City. Chapter 2872. The battle lasted for 31 years, and victory was in sight. Unexpectedly, in just a few breaths of time, everything returned to its original point. In fact, the forest was still spreading at a speed visible to the naked eye. This was the harvest of Jiano in the past 31 years. Not only did it advance, it had also accumulated a lot of energy. Today, all of this energy was used to expand. Outside the forest, there were many Tian clan experts. When they saw this scene, they were completely dumbfounded. They had used an entire 11 years to push into the depths, and the consumption during this period was innumerable. However, the other party had only used a few breaths of time to make their years of effort go to waste. If they still did not understand that they had been played, they would be real fools. Damn it! A Tian clan expert's face was ashen. In these years, not only had the creatures from another spacetime died, but there were also many Tian clan experts. Retreat. Another Tian clan expert said coldly. These creatures from another spacetime who had been attacking for 11 years finally chose to retreat. Their losses were too great. It did not matter if those creatures from another spacetime died, but many general Tian clan experts also died. After the battle stopped, the outside of the city immediately became quiet, which made people feel a little uncomfortable. Next, let's fight. A cold light flashed in Zi Chen's eyes. This city had already stored enough battle strength, and this battle strength was enough to deal with any general realm experts. As for the Divine King, if he dared to come here, it would definitely change the situation of the 10th region. It could be said that no matter how much they disliked Zi Chen, they only dared to use the attitude of a game to deal with him, and did not dare to use a suppressive attitude. If they really dared to suppress him, even if the pagoda battle heavenly god did not make a move, there would always be other experts who crossed over. Recently, news of the battlefield had been spreading to Toby City. According to the information they received, the city would not be able to hold on for long. However, on the second day, a shocking news spread out. The creatures from another spacetime had retreated. And the city that should have been destroyed had returned to its original state this time. This news caused a huge uproar in Toby City, and everyone was in disbelief. One had to know that this was a situation that had occurred after more than 30 years of attack. How could it return to its original state overnight? A smile appeared on Xiao Lina's face when she heard the news. She knew that Lord Zi Chen was starting to retaliate. Many divine generals gathered in the city. They were ready to attack, but they hesitated at this moment. Because everything had returned to the starting point. How were they going to fight this battle? When those forces heard this news, they were also very shocked. But on the other hand, it meant that there would be an endless supply of tree spirit hearts, which was naturally a good thing. Now that the spacetime creature had retreated, it was time for them to attack. 2 days later, the divine generals in the city formed a huge group and set off. This time, there were many idle Protoss following them. If those forces could see the problem, so could they. Moreover, they did not want to destroy anyone. They only wanted to obtain the tree spirit's heart. For them, it was also a place where they could obtain long-term resources. What shocked them was that a ranked divine general had appeared in front of them. This was a kind of encouragement for everyone. There were 3 ranked divine generals standing outside the forest. Their ranks were closely connected, and they were all ranked 104th, 05th, and 06th respectively, after being chased away by Zi Chen by 1 place. The 106th ranked divine general looked at the forest and said, "This is the place where the tree spirit's heart is. I'll go and take a look." With that, his figure flashed and went straight into the forest. Without waiting for the nearby ancient trees to attack, a blade light swept forward and cut down an ancient tree. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Then, more than 10 ancient trees nearby were cut down, and tree spirit's heart fell one after another. The surroundings were empty. The ranked divine general stood in the open space, holding more than 10 tree spirit's heart in his hand. He said disdainfully, "That's all." The people behind him exclaimed. The ranked divine general was indeed powerful. He easily obtained more than 10 tree spirit's heart, and from his expression, he did not seem to care about them. "This is just a low-level resource. Of course, it's useless to you and me. We should go to that city. I heard that there's a king ancient tree there. It might be useful," said the 105th ranked divine general. "That's right. Let's go directly to the depths." The last ranked divine general also came. Then, the 3 ranked divine generals started to go deeper. As for the others, they naturally stayed in the periphery to deal with the ancient trees. This time, more than 1,000 divine generals came, and their fighting strength was extremely strong. When they joined forces, they caused a large amount of damage to the ancient trees. The 3 divine generals went deeper. During this time, they would also attack and destroy the ancient trees easily. "Someone is coming." In the city, Giano transmitted his voice. "How many?" asked Tyrant. 3. Zi Chen did not let Giano stop them. He even let the mist disperse. Those who dared to come here were definitely ranked divine generals. This was not out of Zi Chen's expectation. At this time, the main force of the Life Star had gathered in the city. Tyrant and the others were eager to try. They were waiting for the arrival of the enemy and were very excited. Boom! Powerful energy surged outside the city, and ancient trees fell one after another. Smoke and dust filled the air. 3 figures flew in. The 3 of them stood in the air. When they saw the scene in the city, they were surprised. They scanned the crowd with their divine senses. When they sensed that there was no level 9, their surprise turned into disdain. "Too weak. It's useless to us," said one of the divine generals. He was obviously referring to the ancient tree king. "Are you ready to die?" One of the divine generals looked ahead and said coldly. He was ranked 105th. His name was Walker. "Shouldn't we be the ones asking this question? The 3 of you came here from millions of miles away. You should be ready to die." The one who spoke was Tyrant. Naturally, he would not lose. He stared at Walker and said, "Your armor is not bad. I like it. Let's start with you." Courting death. A cold light flashed in Walker's eyes. "I think you're the one courting death." Tyrant walked forward, his body surrounded by Buddhist light. "Humph. I think all of you should come at me." Walker snorted. "We won't bully you." Once Tyrant moved, Zhong Haotian and the demon ape also moved. Seeing the 3 of them walking towards them, the trio's faces immediately turned ashen. They were ranked divine generals. How could they be underestimated like this? Zi Chen looked at this scene quietly. This time, he wanted to see how strong the 3 of them were. Swish. Chapter 2873. When Zhong Haotian disappeared, the 3 divine generals' expressions changed. They could no longer sense each other's aura. Boom. The demonic ape's aura became violent. He held the black rod and rushed forward. He overtook Tyrant and faced the person beside him. "You're courting death." The 106th divine general's eyes flashed with cold murderous intent as he charged at the demonic ape as well. Torrential energy surged. The demonic ape's rod was blocked by the other party. The powerful vibrations formed a powerful wave. The two immediately flew away, leaving the battlefield behind. The wind whistled as Tyrant crashed into the Divine General. A light shield appeared on his body. Walker slashed forward with his blade. The space distorted as though it was about to be shattered. Boom! A loud boom came from the sky. Tyrant's light shield blocked the attack. At the same time, a powerful rebounding force surged from the light shield. The Divine General was sent flying. Tyrant flashed forward with Buddhist light surrounding him. The battle between the two sides began. Powerful energy surged. The anger on the two Divine Generals' faces slowly turned into shock. They were level 9, but they couldn't suppress their opponent immediately. This level 8 was much stronger than they had imagined. There was one battle that hadn't happened yet. The 104th Divine General stood motionless in the sky. The anger on his face had long disappeared. His expression became very solemn. His divine consciousness spread out, but he couldn't find any trace of the person who had disappeared. At this moment, the others were staring ahead. Among the three battles, Zhong Haotian's battle should be the one that ended the fastest. Zhong Haotian appeared and silently appeared behind the Divine General, thrusting the spear in his hand towards the Divine General. The long spike was black and didn't reflect light. It was silent when it moved forward. Buzz! The long spike was extremely fast. It pierced the Divine General's armor and caused ripples. Whoosh! The Divine General stabbed backward with his sword. The void shook violently, and his sword missed. Cold sweat dripped from his forehead. He didn't notice anything unusual earlier. His defense is indeed not weak. Seeing this, Zichen's expression didn't change. This was within his expectations. The armor's defense was strong. Fortunately, Zhong Haotian's attack wasn't weak either. The armor's luster dimmed after the previous attack. The Divine General held the divine sword in his hand. The patterns on the sword lit up and merged with the armor. Shua! Zhong Haotian reappeared and thrust forward again. Only when he struck the Divine General's defenses did the Divine General react. His sword missed again, and his expression became even more unsightly. It was completely silent. Wang! The energy around him vibrated, forming a terrifying shockwave that spread in all directions. Shua! Zhong Haotian was not affected in the slightest and launched his third attack. After suffering 3 attacks, the defensive light barrier on the surface of the general armor's body continued to distort. Clearly, it would not be able to hold on for much longer. The 104th ranked Divine General felt very sullen. He had a powerful combat strength, but he couldn't cause any damage to the enemy. Now that he couldn't see the enemy, he had no idea where to start. Sword after sword stabbed forward, the sword light shining brightly. It was still useless. Pa! At this moment, he heard a soft sound, and his expression changed drastically. The divine sword in his hand released light, and a powerful aura surrounded his body. With a horizontal slash, sword light shot out. A ray of light separated from the middle. It was just an afterimage. The Divine General retreated quickly with a look of fear on his face. His powerful defense had been broken through just like that. It would take at least a quarter of an hour for the defense to be broken through again. Could he hold on for more than a quarter of an hour? Turbulent energy surged from all directions. It was the battle in the other 2 places. Thinking of the enemy hiding somewhere, the Divine General felt a sense of fear in his heart. He shouted loudly, and the energy on his body vibrated again. Sword light scattered in all directions, and then he used the sword light to fly out of the city without hesitation. There was an uproar behind him. Clearly, no one had expected the Divine General to run away. Zichen sighed. With the Rule Shadow Skin and the Twin Thorns, Zhong Haotian's combat strength had become unimaginable. The Divine General only flew 100 meters before falling to the ground. His body was pierced through by the thorns, and divine blood kept gushing out. A Divine General had died just like that. The other 2 Divine Generals sensed the death of their comrade, and their expressions changed drastically. In terms of ranking, the other party was the highest. They didn't expect him to die just like that. Besides, Chen hadn't made a move yet. It was obviously unrealistic for the two of them to kill these people. They looked at each other, and they had the intention to retreat. At this moment, the devil ape's body was shrouded in black light, and he entered a berserk state. His body transformed for the second time, and he waved the black rod in his hand, smashing it at the enemy in front of him. Boom! A powerful shockwave surged, and the divine general was stopped. The devil ape swung the rod one after another, and the world was filled with the flickering shadows of the rod. Bang! After about 20 rods, the devil ape retracted his rod, and his aura became extremely weak. His opponent coughed out blood, and his face was filled with shock. His defense had been broken. Puff! Zhong Haotian, who had been waiting for a long time, appeared from the darkness and reaped the life of this divine general. Another one died. The last one, Walker, was terrified as he ran out of the city. Monk held a light shield and followed behind him at a leisurely pace. Zhong Haotian, don't follow me. Monk didn't forget to remind him, and his face was filled with excitement. Chen shook his head. He knew what Monk wanted to do, but he didn't stop him. Walker was running in the forest, and his face was filled with fear. He didn't expect this to be the outcome. The other party only sent out 3 level 8 experts, and they already had such terrifying combat strength. You can't escape. Monk's voice came from behind. Walker was terrified, and he ran out of the forest in a frenzy. At this moment, he could already sense the turbulent shockwaves, and it was obvious that he wasn't far from the forest. He saw the people in the battle, and he also saw light. It was as though he saw hope, and he increased his speed again. At this moment, a whistling sound came from behind him, and a light shield flew towards him. Bang! His body was sent flying. Monk appeared in a flash, and he laughed. So what if you're a divine general? Let's see how I'm going to kill you today. A huge Buddha shadow appeared behind Monk, and the Buddha shadow was holding a dazzling golden demon subduing pestle. Demon subduing. Along with the monk's chanting, a boundless aura surged as the attack of the Buddha shadow landed. Walker lifted his head to look at the attack, and his face changed. He gripped the divine blade tightly, and slashed upwards. Chapter 2874. The Buddha's shadow slapped down with a talisman in the center of his palm. The Buddha's power surged, and its aura was vast and mighty. The monk sat cross-legged in the air, bemoaning the state of the universe and pitying the fate of mankind. There was a chanting sound coming from his mouth. Buddhist light spread out in all directions like a Buddha. The mighty palm print fell, and the Buddhist light dyed everything in the surroundings golden. It was as if they had arrived at a Buddhist land. All the divine generals looked at the sky in shock, wondering who dared to challenge a LV8 divine general alone. Annihilation / An angry roar came from below, and a sky-high blade light shot up into the sky, chopping toward the palm print. As a divine general, there was no need to doubt Walker's combat strength. The reason why he had fled earlier was because he was terrified by the death of his comrade. Speaking of which, the one he was afraid of was the silent Zhong Haotian, not the bald man in front of him. Now that the other party had chased after him alone, in his opinion, he was simply courting death. Not only did he want to kill his opponent, but he also wanted to end the battle quickly. The saber radiance went against the heavens and chopped the palm print into pieces. The surging energy surged in the sky. Wang! A trembling sound came from the sky. The Buddha stretched out his hand again. This time, he held a demon subduing pestle in his hand and struck down. The demon subduing pestle was shrouded in Buddhist light, and the sound of chanting rang out continuously. One after another, Buddhas appeared around him. The demon subduing pestle was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived in front of Walker. Walker blocked with his saber. Boom! The energy vibrated again, forming a terrifying shockwave that spread out in all directions. This shockwave was visible to the naked eye. It was vast and terrifying, destroying some of the nearby ancient trees and sending a group of divine generals flying. Amitabha, if I don't enter the hell, who will? The monk spoke. The Buddhist light was like a warm sun, calming the hearts of people. He bemoaned the state of the universe and pitied the fate of mankind, his face full of compassion. The demon fall pestle that had been sent flying into the sky once again erupted with dazzling light. Boundless golden light shot out in all directions as if a domain had been unfolded. Demon subduing strike. The compassionate voice of the monk rang out like a great bell. In this world shrouded in the light of Buddha, the sound of chanting reverberated and some strange changes occurred. The demon subduing pestle fell from the sky, magnifying infinitely in Walker's eyes. Vaguely, he seemed to see a person sitting cross-legged on the pestle. A terrifying pressure fell on Walker's body. Walker's expression changed drastically. Divine light surged from his body, and his aura climbed to the peak. He slashed toward the sky. Reverse dragon break. The blade light that soared into the sky turned into a true dragon surrounded by divine light. The dragon roared and clashed with the demon pestle. Boom! Terrifying energy surged, and the true dragon that was flying against the sky collapsed. The demon subduing pestle fell from above and struck Walker. Walker's body flew backward, and the defense formed by his armor was distorted. His face was filled with fear. The other party was only at level 8, but he actually had such a powerful combat strength. At this time, there were no divine generals around. Everyone was hiding far away and watching this scene in shock. Hey! Ma! Ah! Ba! Me! Bang! The 6 syllables of Sanskrit mantra came out from the sky. The power of the mantra formed a strange force that shook this Buddhist light domain. Walker's body was instantly submerged in the Buddhist light. The mighty force continued to wreak havoc. It was extremely terrifying. Walker roared and slashed forward with his blade. The saber radiance wreaked havoc in the Buddha's light. Sometimes, it would cut through the Buddha's light and soar into the sky. The battle in the distance had already stopped. Everyone looked up at the battle in the sky with shocked expressions. At this moment, besides the lingering Buddhist light and the blade light that shot out from the Buddhist light, they couldn't see anything else. The power of the 6 syllables of Sanskrit mantra was constantly vibrating. It was extremely terrifying. The divine generals were extremely shocked. Apparently, they had never thought that a level 8 warrior could fight against a level 9 divine general. This situation lasted for about 15 minutes. The lingering Buddhist light in front of them disappeared, and the monk's figure appeared. He was still sitting cross-legged in the sky. The Buddhist light around his body had become dimmer, but it was still filled with compassion. He wasn't injured at all. Seeing that the monk was still intact, everyone immediately looked at the divine general. Walker stood on the ground, holding the divine blade tightly. There was no light on his armor anymore. He looked up at the monk and asked, "Who are you?" The monk's compassionate voice echoed in the sky, "Great Buddha of the Life Star, the evil good Buddha. Good, good, good." Walker said good 3 times in a row. His aura instantly withered, and his body fell backward. His vitality dissipated. He was dead. The mantra of Sanskrit mantra had already extinguished his vitality. A divine general was killed by a level 8 warrior just like that. The other generals lifted their heads to look at the monk. They couldn't calm down from their shock. Evil good Buddha. They remembered this name. In the following period of time, this name was destined to rise. The monk stood up in the sky. The Buddhist light on his body surged. He looked at the divine generals and said, "My Buddha is merciful. It's fate that brought us together. You divine generals can practice here as you wish." Apparently, he didn't want to pursue this matter. They could fight here without worries. Many people exhaled in relief. They needed the tree spirit's heart. The ancient trees in this place also needed to grow. It was a kind of mutual assistance. Of course, the ones who benefited in the end were the ones who were still alive. A light flew out from the monk's body. This light rolled Walker's body and returned. The monk's eyes had a gleam of excitement. He walked into the forest. Swish. After several steps, he disappeared into the forest. Puff, puff, puff. The monk who had entered the forest had not gone far when he suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Immediately after, his skin split open in many places, and blood splattered out. There were no less than 20 cuts on his body. Blood was gushing out. Damn that divine general. He's really not easy to deal with. He almost took half of my life. The monk's face was extremely pale. He swallowed a pill without hesitation and walked toward the city. His injuries were recovering quickly. When he reached the city, he had recovered 70 to 80%, but he was still a little weak. How was it? When he arrived at the city, he looked at the crowd with a smug expression. Zichen nodded and said, "Not bad. Not bad." The monk said unhappily, "It should be very good, right? An 8th-level divine general defeating a 9th-level divine general is very impressive. Next, just wait for me to become famous in the divine world." In the distant city center, the ranking of generals shook again. In recent years, the ranking of generals had been shaking more frequently. This time, many people were looking at the ranking of generals. They wanted to see what changes had happened this time. The name of the divine general ranked 104th was erased. This scene shocked everyone. Another divine general had died. In this way, the number of divine generals who had died in the past few decades had reached 3. The city was immediately in an uproar. But then, the 106th divine general disappeared. 2 ranked divine generals had died in one day. This was simply too unbelievable. But in less than an hour, the third name was erased. 3 divine generals were killed in a day. It had been a long time since the city center was shaken. The death of divine generals had not happened in a long time. The news spread quickly. Some people found out and caused a stir. With the 3 ranked immortal world experts killed, the city returned to normal. The battle outside continued, and Zichen did not intervene. A few days later, Zichen received a message. The pagoda battle god wanted him to go back with Yi Qian. Chapter 2875. Zichen was very surprised to receive this news. Under normal circumstances, he would go find the pagoda battle god when he had something to do. The pagoda battle god had never taken the initiative to call them back. After receiving this news, Zichen immediately went to the 9th domain with Yi Qian. Could it be that the heavenly god suddenly called them over for something? But why would the heavenly god look for them? Could it be? Zichen pondered this question along the way. After arriving at the heavenly god residence, Zichen met the 9th heavenly god. In the room, the 9th heavenly god gestured for the two to sit down. There were many strange spiritual fruits on the table, emitting rich spiritual energy. "This time, I called you here mainly to tell you something. You must prepare in advance," the pagoda battle god said as soon as the two sat down. Zichen listened quietly. Yi Qian also looked at the heavenly god. "After a while, I will leave here. The time of my return is uncertain," the pagoda battle god said. "All 9 of us will leave." Zichen's expression changed. He said, "Doesn't that mean that there will be no heavenly god in the realm of the gods?" "That's right. This is also the reason why I called the 2 of you here. Without a heavenly god, the structure of the realm of the gods might change. If you are willing to move to the 9th domain, it would be best. If not, then you must prepare in advance." The pagoda battle god looked at Zichen and said, "Some forces in the 10th domain have some complaints about me. In addition, the relationship between the 9 heavenly gods is not so harmonious. It is inevitable that there will be competition." Zichen understood the pagoda battle god's meaning. Once the pagoda battle god left, those who were previously apprehensive would no longer have any scruples. Moreover, the 2 domains were very far apart. Even if they could send reinforcements, they would not be able to make it in time. The pagoda battle god said, "I know that you have developed well there, but I still suggest that the 2 of you come back. In terms of resources, the 9th domain's resources are not inferior to the outside world." Zichen understood the implication. He asked, "Are you going to leave for a long time this time? We don't know when exactly you will return. Perhaps you will never return." Yi Qian and Zichen's expressions changed greatly after hearing the pagoda battle god's words. Where is the sky god going? Could it be that there are existences in this world that can threaten the heavenly gods? Zichen asked in shock. The pagoda battle god shook his head and said, "This world is far more complicated than you think. Although the heavenly gods represent the strongest battle power, it does not mean that they are invincible. You should have a deep understanding of this. right? Originally, the Tower Battle Heavenly God was only a divine king. It was only after the Heavenly God was killed that the Tower Battle Heavenly God became a heavenly god. The celestial god who had died had left behind a celestial god's bone, which had been obtained by Chen. Heavenly deity was a kind of title, and also a kind of realm. It was said that in this vast land of the divine realm, only 9 heavenly deities could be accommodated at most. If even the gods didn't know when they would return, then it would definitely take a very long time. This long time was at least 10,000 years, perhaps tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years. After leaving for such a long time and losing the 9 great celestial gods, the structure of the god race would naturally change. The Pagoda Battle Heavenly God had carefully considered before letting Chen and Yi Qian return to this area. Chen looked at Yi Qian. Yi Qian looked at Chen. Both of them shook their heads at almost the same time. They had worked hard for so long and were unwilling to give up. You have to think about it carefully. If you return now, you will only lose some resources, and everything can be rebuilt. If you continue to stay there, your future will be endless trouble, the Pagoda Battle Heavenly God said. His tone didn't have any intention of forcing them. Naturally, he would respect all the choices of the two. Chen said, I've already thought about it. I'll continue to stay there. Yi Qian was naturally the same as Chen. The Pagoda Battle Heavenly God nodded and said, That's good. I can still stay here for about 10 years. During this time, you can make preparations in advance. If you need any resources, you can tell me directly. Chen thought for a moment and said, I want some trading resources. The resources in my city are limited. Next, Chen and the Heavenly God had a meal and then left. He wanted to return to Toby City to bring some crystal stones and then go to the 9th region's trading ground to exchange for resources. He had a world and could collect endless resources. So, as long as he brought enough crystal stones, it would be enough. When he went this time, he brought Jolina with him. She knew what resources he needed, and Chen was only responsible for pretending. After exchanging all the crystal stones for resources at a price close to the cost, Chen returned to the city. Next, he wanted to cultivate in seclusion and strive to improve his realm in a short time. The monk killed Walker, and Zhong Haotian killed a ranked divine general. Logically speaking, they should have become ranked divine generals. However, no one from the god race came to give him the armor. Back then, the monk showed off so much. The news must have spread out. Zhong Haotian didn't care about it, and the devil ape didn't say anything. However, the monk was very dissatisfied. What kind of glory was it to have one's own armor? The battle outside was still going on. These people didn't go out to kill, and continued to cultivate here. Time passed quickly. In the 9th year, the Pagoda Battle Heavenly God left. Only Yi Qian and Chen knew about his departure. However, it wouldn't be long before the entire god world knew about it. Another year passed, and everything went back to normal. However, in just 1 year, the original resource control in Toby City became a resource ban. At the same time, an announcement was made that the trading house in Toby City was no longer under the control of the government. This was a direct suppression. In the meeting room, the old man looked at Luo Wei and said, Luo Wei, you're fired. The surrounding people looked at Luo Wei with gloating expressions on their faces. He didn't cooperate with the government, and he only had himself to blame for this. It's hard to predict the outcome. Opposite Luo Wei, the person in charge of Ben Sonlu trading house sighed. Alright, we still have some secret meetings to attend. You can leave now, said the old man. Luo Wei stood up, glanced at the others, and turned to leave. Luo Wei was in a bad mood. It wasn't that he was fired. With his current status in the government, it was only a matter of time before he was fired. The main reason for his gloomy expression was that the trading house in Toby City was directly suppressed by the government. The situation was naturally not good. Luo Wei returned to Toby City and told Jolina about it. Considering that this wasn't a small matter, Jolina went to find Chen. After 10 years of seclusion, Chen came out. His battle prowess had increased, but he hadn't broken through. The heavenly god had only left for a year, and such a scene had occurred. This was beyond Zi-Chen's expectations. The way he saw it, it would at least ease the situation for 8 or 10 years. Chapter 2876. If the exchange was closed, it would be a huge loss for Toby City. But if it was not closed, there would be many resources sold every day, but there would be no replenishment of the same amount. Even though Zi-Chen had obtained many resources 10 years ago, he could not afford such consumption, so it was necessary to close the exchange. After the exchange was closed, the resources in Toby City could still be used by the people in the trial. The rise of Toby City was not because of the exchange. Although the exchange had a lot of popularity, this was a sacrifice for survival. Both Yi Qian and Zhou Lina did not object, because this was a long-term problem, and could not be solved in a day or two. After Zhou Lina returned, she directly announced the closure of the exchange, which caused an uproar. Many dissatisfied voices sounded, and some people faintly guessed something. Without the exchange, Toby City's popularity would definitely drop. But considering the previous official announcement, many people could see that the situation was changing. But they could not understand. Behind Toby City stood a goddess, and behind her was a god, so why did the officials dare to make such a statement? The exchange was closed, and those who wanted to stay, Zhou Lina had other arrangements, and those who did not want to stay were given double the pay and left. The trial in the city continued, and the profits were good, but the popularity dropped by a lot. The one who benefited from this was Ben Senlu. After many years of waiting, they finally had this day. Ben Senlu City's popularity skyrocketed in a short time, which made him very satisfied. Toby City's popularity dropping is only the first step, the next step is destruction. Ben Senlu's eyes flashed with a cold light. As the son of a god, his information was naturally more accurate. If not for those people being too cautious, this would have happened a year ago. Now, the bait had been thrown, he only needed to wait patiently. 3 days later, a person came to Ben Senlu City, and went to the city lord's mansion to look for Ben Senlu. Seeing the divine general, Ben Senlu said, "It seems that you have thought it through." The person said, "After careful consideration, we have decided to take the risk, but there will be some worries, so we came to discuss with young Master Lu." Ben Senlu waved his hand and said, "Just send your people, you don't have to worry about anything else. If there is any trouble, you can push all the responsibility to me." Of course, there won't be any trouble. Right now, the 9th region can't even take care of itself. How would they have the time to care about this place? The other party heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. If that's the case, that would be for the best. Go and prepare the men. This time, I want to wipe out Zi-Chen and his forces in one fell swoop. Ben Senlu's expression turned cold. Of course, he would not forget the previous loss. After the other party left, Xin Lin and the other children of God arrived at Ben Senlu City. Seeing the city's popularity explosively increase, Sina said, "Not bad, huh?" Ben Senlu laughed. "Of course, you need to have foresight. A temporary victory is nothing. What we need is the final victory." Sina nodded. "Are we going to attack Toby City next?" Ben Senlu shook his head and said, "No, we won't touch that place for now. Let's go and take down Yi Qian's city first." "I agree. I think we should go all out. With the tree spirit hearts, our losses won't be too great," said Xin Lin. She had endless hatred for Yi Qian, especially after hearing that Yi Qian had gone back with Zi-Chen to see her father of God 10 years ago. Xavier said worriedly, "But there is something strange outside Yi Qian's city. If we want to take it down, it will be very difficult." "What are you afraid of? It's just some fog beasts. As long as we have enough people, we can kill them all," Xin Lin said unhappily. "Then let's quickly gather people and take the initiative to attack," Ben Senlu said in the end. They decided like that. In the next month, many god generals gathered in Ben Senlu City. After bringing enough resources, these god generals went to Yi Qian's city. At the same time, god general armies appeared from other places. Their target was Yi Qian's city. The reason why they gathered the god general army was because Yi Qian's city was where level 8 and 9 creatures from another time and space stayed. It was very difficult for other low-level god envoys to go there. The God General army came outside the forest and released murderous aura. When the rogue God Generals saw this, their faces changed greatly. They immediately dodged in all directions. A few sons of God stood in front of the army. In other places, God Generals also arrived. This time, the leading immortal generals were all LV9. Obviously, they were going to fight for real. After they met with the sons of God, they gave the order to attack. Many God Generals immediately rushed into the forest. They didn't advance slowly from the outside. Instead, they entered the forest and spread out. This was more efficient, but also more dangerous. Ben Senlu and the others stood outside the forest. Their faces were very cold. When the Divine General Army arrived, Zi Chen was the first to receive the news. This time, the government's attitude was very clear. He didn't have anything to worry about. If he wanted a life star to gain a foothold here, he didn't need a backer. He needed real power. Misty Shadow, kill the enemies outside. Under Zi Chen's order, Misty Shadow went outside. These existences from the Black Order battlefield could even kill ranked God Generals, let alone ordinary ones. Swish, swish. The branches in the forest twisted, entangling God Generals one after another. The God Generals were struggling. Powerful energy waves constantly swept out. The misty fog came, and the misty shadow appeared, reaping lives one after another. This battle didn't last long. It ended after about half a month. A large part of the forest was destroyed. It was a big loss. However, Ben Senlu and the others suffered even more. Almost all the God Generals who came here were killed. Such a big loss made the grudge between the two sides grow deeper. When Ben Senlu and the others mobilized the new Divine Generals, they also spread the news to the other battlefields. After knowing that a great opportunity had appeared in the God realm, the God Generals came out of the battlefields and went to the forest with the tree spirit's heart. The existences who came out of the general-level battlefields were naturally experts. With their arrival, the destruction of the forest sped up. At the same time, all the creatures from the other spacetime within a radius of 1 million miles suddenly changed direction and gathered in the direction of the everlasting city. There were only 2 cities on the Life Star in the God realm. At this moment, these 2 cities were facing the siege of the God Clan and the creatures from the other spacetime. The biggest threat wasn't the God Clan, which had many experts, but the endless creatures from the other spacetime. There were so many of them that they could quickly flood the forest outside. Vigny, it's your turn. Chapter 2877. In the past few years, the Broodmother had never been mobilized. Its purpose was to provide training grounds for the newcomers on the Life Star. All the spacetime creatures it had nurtured over the years were placed in those training grounds. The Broodmother had a deep understanding of the laws of space, so it was easy for it to create a training ground. Just as Zi Chen gave the order to attack, the space outside the forest where the everlasting city was located opened up, and then the creatures from another dimension fell from the sky like scattered beans. These were spacetime creatures that had accumulated for many years. There were so many of them that they couldn't be counted. After they appeared, they immediately charged forward. The spacetime creatures of both sides met and began to fight on the plains. This was a large-scale battle, and also the first direct confrontation between spacetime creatures in the divine realm in so many years. Of course, this was more like a war of attrition, because no matter how many spacetime creatures of this level were lost, it wasn't as painful as the Broodmother. White mist flickered on the battlefield, and those were all shadows. However, their purpose wasn't to fight, but to collect corpses. As long as they had corpses, they could create more shadow spirit fruits and make themselves stronger. This news quickly spread, causing an uproar. This proved that Zi Chen's side had a Broodmother, and one that could listen to orders. This meant that Zi Chen would have an endless supply of spacetime creatures, and he could form an army. Damn it, how did he get a controlled Broodmother? Ben Senlu was furious when he heard this. He had always wanted to obtain a living, controllable Broodmother, but he had never succeeded. He never thought that Zi Chen would succeed. While he was angry, he was also filled with envy and jealousy. Why did Zi Chen always have so many good things by his side? The spacetime creatures within a million li were stopped, unable to cause any damage to Everlasting City. Outside Everlasting City, the progress of the divine generals was also very slow. Clearly, this battle would continue indefinitely, and no one knew when it would end. Attack Toby City. This wasn't the result Ben Senlu wanted. His eyes flashed with a cold light as he came up with another idea. Attack Toby City? That's a divine city that has been reported. Sina said in surprise, this will be very troublesome. Ben Senlu said, it's no trouble at all. We'll use the excuse that Zi Chen is colluding with spacetime creatures to attack. With the departure of the 9 great heavenly deities, the situation in the God realm was changing. It wasn't just the 10th domain. The other domains weren't peaceful either. The ambitions of many powerhouses that had been suppressed for many years began to stir. They only needed a reason to attack Toby City. They didn't need everyone to believe it. On the same day, the officials once again announced that Toby City was disqualified from the Protoss because Zi Chen had colluded with creatures from another dimension. After hearing this news, the divines in Toby City fell into panic. Many of them left on the same day. This news wasn't groundless, as Toby City had an endless supply of mother nests and creatures from other dimensions that could be used for training. They had already guessed it, and this time, they received confirmation from the officials. Then, there were rumors that the children of God had sent troops to attack Toby City. At the same time, there were rumors that the teleportation formation in Toby City was about to be forcefully closed. As a result, even more people chose to leave. These people are really ruthless. Divine General Luo Wei's expression was gloomy as he watched the crowd leave. He went to find Zhou Lina to see if there was any other way to stabilize the situation. Otherwise, the city that he had painstakingly built for so many years would be ruined. Unexpectedly, Zhou Lina wasn't in the city. At this time, Zhou Lina was reporting to Zi Chen about what had happened in the city. Zi Chen's expression didn't change, but the others were furious. Let's kill our way over. I don't believe they can take Toby City, Devil Ape said coldly, his eyes filled with ruthlessness. There's no point in us staying here. Let's go fight. Isn't that Sen Lu very arrogant? This Buddha will make him unable to be arrogant. Tyrant's face was also filled with anger. Yi Qian didn't say anything. Although she had expected this to happen, she didn't expect it to happen so quickly. At this time, everyone was looking at Zi Chen, waiting for his reply. Zi Chen said in a deep voice, this battle won't end in a day or two. Moreover, the situation of the God realm might change in the future. The battle might be endless. Let's give up. Everyone looked at him in surprise. It didn't seem like now was the time to give up. Zi Chen looked at Zhou Lina and said, go back to Toby City and tell everyone that we have given up on this city. If they are willing to stay, then bring them here. If not, then give them more rewards. Let's part on good terms. Zhou Lina nodded and said, I understand. Bring back everything we can take from the city. Don't leave anything behind. Everyone's face was ashen and unsightly. Clearly, the God realm didn't want them to have an easy time. Zhou Lina returned to Toby City and spread the news. The already chaotic city became even more chaotic at this moment. Sir has given up on this city. Luo Wei was in disbelief when he heard the news. In his view, the situation was far from enough to give up on this city. In this way, Toby City was as good as finished. Even if it could be rebuilt in the future, it would definitely not be as popular as it was now. Hurry up and give me my rewards. I want to leave. Give me my rewards first. Not a single spirit crystal less. Give me mine first. The place where they received their rewards was already surrounded by many God realm emissaries. Most of them were decomposers of this city and had been here for many years. Over the years, they had gained a lot in Toby City. Of course, they wanted to continue doing this. Unfortunately, Zi Chen's collusion with the creatures from another dimension had angered everyone. At this time, almost no one was willing to stay. Seeing such a scene, Zhou Lina signaled for more platforms to be opened. Those who came with her back then wouldn't leave. The moment they came here, they were already the goddess people. The teleportation arrays lit up. Only those who left did not return. Even many of the guards guarding the teleportation arrays left after receiving their rewards. In just a few days, Toby City, which was originally bustling with people, became very deserted. But not everyone left. Of the millions of people in the city, only a few thousand remained. Besides the people brought by Jolena, there were also Moonwolf clansmen who came from the God City in the lower realm, as well as the God Realm clansmen who had stayed in the city to serve it. After confirming that they hadn't left, Toby closed the teleportation array and everyone began to pack up the city. Outside the city, Ben Sen Lu's army arrived. Attack! Ben Sen Lu waved his hand and many attacks rained down on the city like hailstones. Let's go! Toby glanced at the empty city and led his people to the teleportation array. The teleportation array flashed and they disappeared. Boom! Chapter 2878. There was nothing left in Toby City. This city that had flourished for so many years had finally fallen into desolation today. Ben Sen Lu stood outside the city, behind him stood a group of divine generals. Their attacks fell like meteors, hitting the city's protective barrier, causing ripples after ripples. The other children of gods were also present. At this moment, the most excited one was Xin Lin. Her beautiful eyes flashed as she coldly said, "Yi Qian, this is only the first step. There will be more good shows for you to perform." Boom! 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 Deafening explosions continued to resound. There were many divine envoys in the distance. The scene of the city being attacked was truly shocking to them. There were also some people who had complicated feelings. A prosperous trading ground had been destroyed in such a short time. It seemed that they could not offend the officials. Otherwise, all their efforts would be for naught. After 2 days of continuous attacks, the city's great array could not hold on any longer and exploded. This was a king city. They had paid a great price to upgrade it and even invited a divine king. Who would have thought that it would be destroyed like this? With a flash of divine light, Ben Sen Lu flew into the city. At this moment, the city was extremely empty. All the buildings that could be taken away had been taken away. The remaining buildings could not be moved, including the trading ground. A wind blew past, sweeping up Ben Sen Lu's divine robe. A smile appeared on his face, and it quickly spread. His laughter echoed in the sky above Toby City. It was very carefree. Xin Lin and the others were also laughing. They were in a good mood because this was the first time they had gained the upper hand in the battle against Zi Chen and Yi Qian. Burn it! After the laughter, Ben Sen Lu indifferently gave the order like a victor. The city burned with flames that soared into the sky. Blazing waves of fire spread out in all directions, surging violently. This was a king city, and it was very valuable. However, these children of gods did not care about it. As long as this fire could make them happy and let them vent their anger, it was not a big deal. The fire died down for a few days. After the flames disappeared, the city was completely abandoned. Ben Sen Lu and the other children of gods turned around and left. Looking at the troops in the distance, many people in the crowd sighed. The destruction of Toby City was not only a loss for Zi Chen, but also for the nearby cities. Back then, the reason they built the city was to take advantage of Toby City's popularity. They had developed very well over the years. Now that Toby City was burned to the ground, these cities would also welcome winter. The last few thousand people arrived at Yi Qian's city. This was the first time they had arrived at this place. After seeing the towering ancient tree at the center of the city, each and every one of them was extremely shocked. There were no towering walls around the city, only ancient trees. The ancient tree was surrounded by clouds and mist. It was said to be a powerful existence. From time to time, shouts of killing could be heard from the ancient forest, indicating that the battle had not yet ended. The appearance of Zi Chen and Yi Qian caused the surrounding discussions to disappear. Gradually, the crowd calmed down and bowed, their voices loud and clear. "Welcome to Goddess City. Everyone will be staying in this city for a long time to come and live here." Zi Chen said to the crowd. "My lord, what do we need to do?" asked one of the divine envoys. "You don't need to do anything, just cultivate." Zi Chen's answer was unexpected. In many people's opinion, since their lord had given up on Toby City, It would be harder for them than before. They did not expect that Zi Chen would actually ask them to cultivate. The current situation was naturally the most dangerous time for Zi Chen and Yi Qian. The loss of Toby City was even greater. However, since these people were able to stay, it was clear that Yuanhe trusted the two of them. In that case, he would also trust these people and provide them with resources to help them grow. There is a new training ground here. Those who have not reached the Divine Champion realm can go there to train. Divine Champions can fight outside, and the ancient tree will assist you. This was Zi Chen's arrangement for these people. Everyone was very excited. They did not expect that at this moment, their treatment would be much better than before. There were many more buildings in the city for these people to stay in. The originally quiet city immediately became lively with the addition of these thousands of people. When Tyrant and the others appeared, they could not wait to go out and start a massacre. They were very strong. One of them could fight a group of people. They could kill until those people were completely terrified and did not dare to invade again. Zi Chen shook his head and said, "Let's not act rashly for now." They looked at him in confusion. Toby City was gone, and the other party obviously did not care anymore. Why did they not act? The 9 divine champions have left, and I don't know when they will return. At this time, the various regions should not be peaceful. We should wait here patiently. Even if it is chaotic, we should not be the first to act. Hearing Zi Chen's words, Tyrant and the others' expressions changed. They did not know this news before. However, now they finally knew why the government dared to be so arrogant and make such an arrangement. Zi Chen said, "If there is really trouble that we cannot solve, we will naturally take action. However, before that, it is better to continue like this. Don't be idle, hurry up and cultivate. Only by becoming stronger can we avoid trouble." Everyone was shocked by the news of the Divine Champion's departure. In this way, the original balance of the 9 regions might be changed. The Divine Kings who had been suppressed by the Divine Champions might take action. In this situation, a life star without a King God Realm expert couldn't act rashly. At least, they could not be the first ones to act. Moreover, the battle in the outside world was not a bad thing for them. The ancient tree and the misty shadow could grow. Once one of them reached the Divine King realm, it would be amazing. Even if it was not good enough, they could still expand their territory to cover a wider area. Zi Chen waited patiently, or in other words, he was in seclusion. He was already at level 8 and was about to reach level 9. Recently, he had started to refine the vast sun divine crystal he had obtained. He hoped that his realm could improve further and reach level 9. That way, his fighting power would be stronger. He believed that he could defeat 99% of the divine generals in the divine world. It was worth mentioning that no one had come to give Tyrant the armor. It seemed that they did not recognize his competence. Everything was just as Zi Chen had guessed. The situation in the 9 regions began to stir. All the forces were ready to make a move. It seemed like the news of the God of Heaven's departure had already spread. He would not return for a long time, or perhaps he would never return. On this day, the sons of divine champions gathered again. It was obvious that they were not in a good mood. "Time is running out," said Tsuni. Chapter 2879. The situation of the God realm was more severe than Zi Chen had imagined. Those children of gods who had lost the protection of the gods could no longer do as they pleased. Although Ben Senlu had developed well here, in the face of the bigger picture, this region was still too remote and he had too few people. It could be said that in these years, he had only developed his economy and not his military. Even if he had, it would have been used up by the ancient trees outside Goddess City. Without the protection of the gods, they still had their families, so they had to go back and develop. Everyone had to go back and their families were already urging them. However, they were naturally unwilling to leave just like that, so they decided to destroy Goddess City before leaving. Different from them, Yi Qian did not have any maternal family power here. Once this city was destroyed, she would have to start from scratch. In such a chaotic situation, Yi Qian would not even have the chance to start from scratch. From now on, she would be the most unknown child of gods in the God realm. This was what Xin Lin wanted to see the most. It was also what the other children of gods wanted to see. They would not kill Yi Qian, but they would kill Zi Chen and cut off Yi Qian's left and right arms. After discussing with the families of the 10th domain, they decided to send out their experts one last time and invited the ranked divine generals. This time, a total of 8 ranked divine generals came. This was an extremely rare scene. Among them, Ka Tuor had the highest ranking. He was ranked 83rd. The other 7 were ranked lower than him. Among them, 4 divine generals ranked 104th, 105th, 106th, and 107th respectively. These 4 heavenly generals had all been killed. Among them, the 105th heavenly general, Walker, was killed by the monk in front of everyone. However, not only did the god realm not give the monk a set of armor, they gave another divine general. The other 3 divine generals were ranked 100, 101 and 102 respectively. Although their rankings were relatively low, it should be known that there were only 108 divine generals in the entire divine realm, and there were no more than 100 of them who were more powerful than them. These divine generals were also divided into 10 domains. Each domain was infinitely large. To be able to gather 8 ranked divine generals in Ben Senlu City was an extremely rare thing. Seeing these 8 divine generals, Ben Senlu was very satisfied. Zi Chen was only ranked 103rd. Even if there were a few people there who could fight against ranked divine generals, there were only a few of them. How could they be a match for 8 ranked divine generals? This was the highest number of experts that Ben Sonlu and the other families in the region could gather, and it was also the last time. This also indicated their determination and confidence in killing Zi Chen. Ben Senlu led the God General army that attacked Tobi City and headed out of Goddess City. The battle here was still ongoing. There were people from many different forces who wanted to obtain the tree spirit's heart. Ever since the goddess had been ostracized by the officials of the 10th domain, they no longer cared about her. The 8 ranked divine generals stood outside the forest. Their armor was exceptionally eye-catching, emitting a dazzling radiance. Seeing these 8 ranked divine generals, the battle around them paused. Everyone could feel the unusual atmosphere and subconsciously retreated. The appearance of 8 ranked divine generals meant that they wanted to end this battle once and for all. The sons of gods walked forward. Ben Senlu shouted, "Zi Chen, get out here." The loud and clear voice spread in all directions and entered the forest. The 8 ranked divine generals released their killing intent. This killing intent stirred up the surrounding clouds and brought with it a powerful pressure. They didn't enter the forest and instead stood outside. The mist shadow was no longer a secret. Everyone knew how powerful they were, so at this time, it was the wisest choice to fight outside. In Goddess City, Zi Chen first heard Jiano's voice transmission, then heard Ben Senlu's words. Since the other side dared to be so arrogant, it meant that they were prepared for a fierce battle. Zi Chen walked out of the room with a cold smile on his face. He had told everyone to cultivate and ignore what was happening outside. However, if trouble came knocking, he wasn't afraid. "Come out." Zi Chen's voice sounded. Monk and the others walked out. Zi Chen's voice transmission indicated that a tough opponent had arrived. Devil Ape was wearing a set of general armor. He was good at close combat, so this set of general armor was useful to him. The other 3 sets of general armor were worn by Xing Chen, Lei Ting, and LV Peng. LV Peng was an array master. All his powerful combat strength was in spiritual arrays. Other than that, he wasn't strong in individual combat. He needed a set of armor to protect himself. Lei Ting, Xing Chen, Brilliant, and Mingyu represented the sun and moon respectively. They were the true geniuses. In terms of individual combat strength, they weren't weaker than Devil Ape and the others. Other than that, Zi Chen's team also had Longhu Sovereign, Flying Divine Tiger, Sky Devouring Wolf, and other experts. Although the Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Rosefinch, and Black Tortoise were strong, they weren't grade 8 yet. Therefore, they wouldn't participate in this battle. Wang Xian walked out of the team. She held a sword in her hand. It was the Battle King Sword, one of the 9 extreme weapons. Su Mengyao, Lin Shui, and Shangguan Yue wouldn't participate in this battle either. There were only 8 enemies. It wasn't a problem to divide the number of people. The team flew to the outside world. As they moved forward, Zichen's armor appeared. Divine light shone and a long spear appeared in his hand. The long spear and the armor were a set. After holding the long spear, his strength increased tremendously. They left the forest and reached the outside world. The divine generals in the distance cried out in alarm at the sight of this. Zichen had more people on his side, and there were a total of 5 of them who were wearing battle armor. Many people had witnessed the last battle. Even though Zichen's group was not ranked on the battle armor, their combat power was still undeniably strong. Yi Qian, let's settle our scores today. Xin Lin looked at Yi Qian and said coldly. Since you're willing to come here to die, I'm happy to fulfill your wish, Yi Qian replied coldly. Zhong Haotian had disappeared from the crowd. Monk stepped forward. His body shone brightly. He shouted, "Who's the strongest among you? Come and fight with me." The faces of the divine generals darkened. They were grade 9. How could they be looked down upon by a grade 8? Monk said again, "Those ranked below 105, don't come. Your combat strength is too weak. You should be at least above 105. Some of them changed their faces. They remembered who Monk was. This was especially true for room 105. Under normal circumstances, this general armor should have been a monk's. Zichen, who was prepared to fight against 83 Ka Tuor, suddenly had an idea when he saw such an arrogant monk. He said, "I'll leave him to you." "Is he strong?" Monk asked. "He's ranked 83. What do you think?" Zichen said. "Then die." Chapter 2880. Ka Tuor was ranked 83rd, while the monk was only 105. They were not at the same level. Most importantly, the monk was only at level 8. How could Ka Tuor put such an existence in his eyes? Energy fluctuated around Ka Tuor. Divine light shot out from his general armor as he dashed toward the monk. Buddhist chants arose. A light shield appeared in the monk's hand. Although he was louder than anyone else, he was more afraid of death than anyone else. Before he could confirm his opponent's competence, he would not attack recklessly. The light shield blocked in front of him. The patterns on it glowed, forming a defense. It was a shield. One of the 9 extreme weapons of the Life Star. It had the title of the strongest defense. Ka Tuor punched out. The space around him twisted as a powerful energy surged out. Boom. The fist hit the light shield. Divine light and Buddhist light exploded. Terrifying shockwaves expanded everywhere. The monk was shaken, flying backward for almost 100 meters. The brilliance of the light shield circulated, helping him neutralize the power of this attack. Stabilizing his body, the monk gazed at Ka Tuor and said, "Your power is not bad. But it's impossible to break my defense." A sharp light sparkled in Ka Tuor's eyes. Divine light twirled around him as he used the fleet footsteps to attack the monk. Boom. The energy vibrated again. The monk retreated again. The light shield provided him with the strongest defense, but Ka Tuor still couldn't break it. Looking at the unbreakable defense of the monk, the divine generals who were watching the battle from a distance were astounded. All of this was within Zichen's expectation. With the monk blocking Ka Tuor, he could free his hands to fight. Speaking of which, the other 7 ranked divine generals were not weak either. Kill. The demon ape dashed forward. He was wearing the general armor and holding the black stick. Endless black energy seeped out from the gaps of the armor, covering his body. The general armor couldn't increase his fighting competence. The most important thing was his defense. LV Peng stood in the sky. Formation flags hovered around him, ready to activate the formation at any time. Xing Chen and Thunder followed him, each heading toward a divine general. Heavenly Thunder, strike. Thunder rumbled in the sky, and a bolt of lightning descended from the sky with a mighty momentum, like a diving thunder dragon. He was up against a divine general ranked 105th. His opponent held a long sword in his hand. Divine light swirled around the sword as he thrust it toward the sky. The divine general clashed with the heavenly thunder. Thunderous booms rang out continuously, forming waves of powerful chi waves that spread out in all directions. Starlight appeared in the sky as Xing Chen's power poured down and landed on Xing Chen's body, dyeing the divine armor on his body silver. He held a divine saber in his hand and slashed forward. A Xing Chen fell from the sky and landed on the divine blade. The chi on the divine blade became tyrannical, and the blade light that was surrounded by divine light turned pure silver. His opponent was the fourth divine general, who was ranked 104th Kai. A sharp sword chi tore through the air and headed straight for one of the divine generals. 8 sword wills coiled around it as it soared into the sky. A woman holding a sword walked over in the air. Her features were picturesque, and her beauty was unparalleled. Her figure was tall and slender, and her skin emitted a jade-like glow. Wang Xian was like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. Her sword chi soared into the sky and clashed with a divine general. At this moment, many divine generals were attracted to Wang Xian. There were many members of the goddess race in the realm of the gods, and many of them were good-looking. However, it was rare to see someone as beautiful as Wang Xian. Most importantly, she was only at level 8, but she dared to draw her sword against a divine general. This was unprecedented. Compared to Wang Xian, Longhu Sovereign, Flying Divine Tiger, and other existences joined forces. Although they were equally powerful, they didn't attract as much attention as Wang Xian. Everyone chose their opponents one after another, leaving only the 107th Divine General. Other than Zhong Haotian, who had disappeared, Zi Chen was the only one who hadn't made a move yet. He looked at the 107th Divine General, and divine light burst out from his body as a terrifying aura was released. The general armor on his body seemed to have come alive and released a powerful aura. The patterns on the spear lit up one by one. The spear started to vibrate, and it contained a powerful force. Using the Fleetfoot step, he dashed forward and pointed his spear forward. Divine light surged on the spear, and a spear radiance shot out from the spear, piercing through the void and heading straight for his opponent. The 107th Divine General shouted as he slashed forward with his saber. The saber radiance collided with the spear. A powerful force exploded, and the two attacks dissipated. Page 103 is only SOSO. The Divine General with the saber snorted, and his expression turned cold. Zi Chen dashed out from the surging energy and pointed his spear at the Divine General in front of him. The Divine General blocked with his saber, and with a boom, his body retreated. Swish! Zi Chen dashed forward with his spear. Divine light surged as the spear smashed down like a rod, and a whistling sound was heard. The Divine General gritted his teeth and held his saber in front of him. Boom! Divine light burst out as the Divine General's body fell to the ground. Zi Chen was very powerful. On the surface, it seemed that he could suppress the 107th Divine General. However, he could only suppress him, and it was impossible to break through his defense in a short time. In everyone's eyes, this was a normal battle. If the ranking of the Divine Generals were not very different, and both of them had their general armors, it would be difficult to determine the victor in a short time. However, Zi Chen was obviously the strongest in the team, and yet he was being held back by the lowest-ranking Divine General. This meant that the other battles were not so optimistic. As time passed, the gap between the two parties would become more obvious. Yi Qian looked at the battle in front of her, and her expression did not change much. Ben Senlu, on the other hand, was sneering. He had gathered so many Divine Generals because of this scene. The development of the battle was in line with his expectations. How could a bunch of level 8 Divine Generals be a match for a level 9 Divine General? This battle could not be maintained for another 15 minutes, and Zi Chen's team would soon be defeated. Everyone could see the problem. Indeed, less than 15 minutes had passed, and the battle situation had changed. Sword Ancestor Steelies appeared beside Wang Xian, and these Sword Ancestor Steelies formed a territory. She stood in the territory, and her body emitted a dazzling light, like a goddess of war. 8 streaks of sword essence fell from the Sword Ancestor Steelies and merged with the sword, and the entire sword emitted a dazzling light. Wang Xian thrust her sword forward. The Divine General, who was also in the territory, felt the pressure. His expression changed slightly, and he blocked with his weapon. A clanging sound was heard, and the weapon in his hand flew out. The long sword, which was surrounded by sword essence, pierced into the chest of the divine general, but was blocked by the surface of his general armor. "You can't break through my defense," the divine general said coldly. Buzz. At this moment, a tremor was heard beside him, and a figure appeared. The figure held a long sword, and his body was surrounded by two types of energy. He slashed forward with his sword. 8 streaks of saber essence circled around the long sword, and it emitted a powerful fluctuation. Boom! The long sword landed on the general armor, and the general armor began to distort and tremble. Then, it exploded. Chapter 2881. There was an uproar as everyone stared at the scene in front of them. 2 Zi Chen appeared on the battlefield. One of them was wearing armor and holding a spear as he fought with the 107th ranked opponent. The other one was surrounded by 2 types of energy as he broke through the defense of another ranked divine general with a blade. While the crowd was in an uproar, a black silhouette appeared behind the divine general who had broken through the defense. He appeared without a sound, like a ghost. No one saw how he appeared. By the time they noticed him, his attack had ended and he had returned to the darkness. The light on the ranked divine general dissipated as his body fell to the ground. Before his body hit the ground, he was swept away by a ray of light. The sword domain dispersed as Zi Chen and Wang Xian appeared and looked at the battlefield. One of the 8 ranked divine generals had died. This change caused Ben Senlu and the others to be shocked. Boom! At this moment, another violent aura surged. It was the sky-splitting battle ape. His body expanded rapidly as the armor on his body also enlarged. The black rod in his hand seemed to have turned into a heavenly rod as he smashed at the enemy in front of him. 1 rod, 2 rods, and more rods. The sky was filled with rod shadows. The rod shadows smashed at the enemy, producing dull sounds one after another. Facing the series of attacks from the devil ape, the enemy couldn't retaliate at all. They could only retreat and defend themselves. The devil ape advanced in pursuit. The 2 parties were like 2 streaks of light, one in front and one behind. The sky was filled with rod shadows. After flying for more than 10 miles, a loud boom sounded. The ranked divine general's defense shattered. Just as the defense shattered, the black shadow appeared again. Poof! A soft sound was heard as the black shadow disappeared again. No one could see what the black shadow looked like because he never stopped, as if he was a real shadow. The ranked divine general died as expected. There were 6 ranked divine generals left. The devil ape's breathing became heavier, but he still had the strength to fight. Compared to 10 years ago, his combat strength had increased significantly. He charged at the opponent with the rod and fought the same enemy. Zi Chen's real body rushed towards the 107 divine generals. Facing the joint attack of his doppelganger and his real body, the divine general revealed a look of terror on his cold face. With the godly spear in front and the 9 extreme saber in the back, the defense of this divine general was broken under the combined attacks of the 2. After breaking through the other party's defenses, Zhong Xian and his clone didn't continue attacking. Instead, they turned around to deal with another opponent. Zhong Haotian appeared. Without defense, a ranked divine general was no different from an ordinary level 9 divine general in his eyes. Even if the other party was on guard, it would still be difficult for him to escape the fate of being killed. Another divine general had died. The Longhu sovereign coughed out blood as he was sent flying. He had joined forces with the flying divine tiger to deal with a ranked divine general. At this moment, both of them were injured. Die. The divine general rushed in front of the Longhu sovereign and struck at his head. Kai. A sword chi tore through the air and blocked the attack. Wang Xian wielded her sword and stepped forward to stop the other party. The 8-sword ancestral steles appeared once again and circled around him, forming a new sword domain. The divine general was trapped in the domain. The change in the battle had exceeded everyone's expectations. No one had expected the battle to turn out like this. The battle that was originally advantageous for the divine general had now turned into a situation where only 5 people were left alive. And from the looks of it, it wouldn't be long before the 5 of them died as well. Ben Sonlu and the other children of heaven's faces were extremely ugly. They couldn't accept the scene before them. Scram! A furious roar rang out as powerful energy surged. One of the divine general had turned into a giant. He punched out, causing the void to tremble violently as if it was about to shatter. Boom! The divine general collided with the devil ape's attack. The powerful shockwave sent the devil ape flying. Swoosh! Zichen's clone arrived with his spear and stabbed forward. Upon encountering the other party's defense, a powerful force exploded. On the other side, Zichen's real body slashed down with his saber. Wang! The light barrier around the divine general's body began to tremble and distort violently. The devil ape's eyes turned crimson red. His body changed again. This time, he was much smaller, but his aura was even more violent. He charged forward as if he had teleported. When he arrived in front of the divine general, the black rod in his hand continuously smashed down. Explosions rang out continuously as the sky was filled with rod shadows. The explosions didn't stop. With a final explosion, the divine general's defense shattered. At this moment, the devil ape had exhausted all his strength. He retreated and hid in the ancient forest. Puff! With the defense broken, Zhong Haotian appeared and killed the divine general in an instant. There were only 4 divine generals left. Other than Ka Tuor, who was fighting against Monk, the other 3 had their own opponents. Seeing the other divine generals being killed one after another, the other 3 looked at each other and decided to retreat. If this continued, they would definitely die. Wang! The void trembled as array flags floated up and down. The long-prepared array was activated. LV Peng stood in the air and controlled the array. This time, Zichen planned to kill all the divine generals. Naturally, he wouldn't let them escape. Since he wanted to intimidate them, he had to beat them into submission. Monk was still resisting with all his might. It was getting harder and harder for him even though he had a light shield. Ka Tuor's combat strength was extremely strong. He displayed the strength that a divine general ranked 83 should have. Clang! 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 In the sky, a powerful attack appeared, falling down like a rain of swords. LV Peng's array enveloped the 3 divine generals, excluding Ka Tuor. Zichen and the others were inside the array, working together to kill the 3 divine generals. Ben Senlu's face was gloomy. The other families didn't look good either. Obviously, they had failed again. They had already lost 4 divine generals. If this continued, they might lose even more. Although they were unwilling, they had to admit that they had failed again. They were ready to retreat. At this moment, a strong gust of wind suddenly blew over, and within that strong wind was a dense fog. The moment they saw the fog, everyone's face changed. They knew something was wrong. However, the fog moved very quickly. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived and covered the area. The misty shadow, who had been waiting for a long time, finally moved. Their goal was to kill all of them. Screams arose unceasingly. The thick fog rolled violently. The misty shadow appeared one by one, reaping the lives of the divine generals. These divine generals didn't just have to guard against the misty shadow. They also had to guard against the giant crocodile that could come out of the ground at any time. The thick fog was still expanding. The onlookers in the distance ran away in fright. They didn't have time to watch the show anymore. Amidst the thick fog, the distorted formation dissipated, and the fog enveloped the surroundings. Zichen and the others then appeared. The 3 divine generals had all died in the battle. At this moment, Ka Tuor was the only one left among the 8 divine generals. As the thick fog dispersed, Zichen turned to look at Ka Tuor. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Killing those divine generals wasn't a big deal. Only killing Ka Tuor, who was ranked 83, was the real deterrent. Chapter 2882. Zichen dashed toward Ka Tuor. His body was shrouded in the light of yin and yang as he unsheathed his blade. A sharp blade radiance shot out from the tip of the blade and slashed toward Ka Tuor. Ka Tuor slashed forward with his sword. Sword radiance shot out from the divine sword. At the same time, he punched out again. The fist shrouded in divine light hit the light shield in front of Tyrant. Boom! Divine light exploded, and Tyrant was sent flying again. Tyrant had been sent flying again and again since the start of the battle. He had yet to launch an effective attack. A long spear pierced through the sky and pierced toward Ka-Tuor. This was the attack of the doppelganger. He had become one with the spear, stirring up the wind and clouds in all directions. Clang! Ka-Tuor slashed down with his sword. A powerful shockwave sent the doppelganger flying backward with his spear. Wang Xiana attacked with her sword, but he easily dodged the sharp sword chi. At the same time, he swung his sword backward and repelled Wang Xiana. As an existence ranked 83, Ka-Tuor's combat power was much stronger than the others. Even though they had joined forces, they still couldn't get close to him. Zhong Haotian didn't make a move. With his current combat power, he might be able to kill Ka-Tuor in one strike. However, someone had to break through Ka-Tuor's defense first. Demon subduing. Buddhist chants resounded. Boundless Buddhist light illuminated the surroundings. A Buddha appeared out of nowhere and slapped down with his palm. This was the first time Tyrant launched an attack since the start of the battle. A palm print fell from the sky. It was surrounded by runes and emitted a resplendent light. Ka-Tuor raised his head and looked at the sky. His body was covered by the Buddhist light. A trace of disdain flashed in his eyes as he slashed out with his sword. The sword radiance shot up into the sky like a waterfall, carrying a powerful aura as it split the palm print into two. Wang. The moment the palm print dissipated, a demon subduing pestle appeared in the sky. It came down with a powerful aura. The pressure in the surroundings increased instantly. The Buddhist power surged crazily. Boom. As the energy collided, the demon subduing pestle was sent flying backward. His too strong. Tyrant, who was sitting cross-legged at the back, transmitted his voice helplessly. The difference between them wasn't just a realm, but also their combat power. Since Ka-Tuor was able to become a divine general, he must have something extraordinary. As his ranking increased, the difference in combat power became more obvious. Swish. Swish. Beams of light flew forward one after another. Sword lights flashed one after another, but Ka-Tuor had dissolved them all. Up until now, they had not been able to get close to each other, let alone break through their defenses. So what if all of you join hands? You're still not my match. Ka-Tuor snorted, his eyes cold and indifferent. He was strong and confident. Boundless divine light flashed and transformed into a huge python. The python's tail swept out, and the surrounding space began to distort. Peng! Peng! Wherever the attack passed, Wang Xian, his doppelganger, Lei Ting, Xing Chen, and the others were sent flying. Previously, they had worked together to kill 7 divine generals, but now, they were beaten back by a single person. Ka-Tuor hovered in the air, his eyes cold. The surrounding clouds were still tumbling, and the fog shadows were still attacking. The battle was about to come to an end. Wang Xian and the rest retreated. With their current strength, it was impossible for them to cause any harm to Ka-Tuor. Ka-Tuor stepped forward, shaking the void and stirring up a ripple. Cold light sparkled in his eyes as he was ready to attack. At this moment, the void suddenly trembled, and rays of light appeared one after another. They were lotus flowers. The lotus flowers shone with the radiance of yin and yang, floating in the surroundings. Ka-Tuor's pupils shrank. He saw the lotus flowers whizzing forward and approaching him. A deafening roar resounded through heaven and earth, and boundless yin and yang radiance exploded. Zi Chen stood in the distance and looked indifferently at Ka-Tuor, who was shrouded in yin and yang energy. He did not think that such an attack could cause much of a threat to Ka-Tuor. Light flashed in front of him, and a new yin-yang lightning lotus was taking shape. This time, there was only one lightning lotus. As yin and yang energy continued to pour into it, the color of the lightning lotus deepened. Waves of destruction spread out, and it was getting more and more intense. Zi Chen pursed his lips and stared ahead. The color of the lightning lotus deepened. The energy in front of him was still surging violently. After the yin and yang energy exploded, the power was terrifying. Unsurprisingly, Ka-Tuor, who was shrouded in divine light, appeared. You want to hurt me with such a weak attack? Dream on. His expression was cold and disdainful as he stared at Zi Chen and said coldly, "Swoosh." At this moment, Ka Tuor sensed danger. He saw a lightning lotus flying towards him. Different from the hundreds and thousands of lightning lotuses before, this lightning lotus had a deeper color. It was extraordinary. Wherever it passed, it caused ripples in space, as though it was going to shatter space. This was once Zi Chen's strongest attack. It was his trump card, and it was extremely powerful. Ka Tuor did not dare to be careless. His expression turned serious, and he stabbed forward with the divine sword in his hand. The sword radiance shot out and landed on the yin-yang lightning lotus. The lightning lotus began to tremble, and the yin and yang energy became unstable. Intense waves of energy spread out. Boom! The lightning lotus exploded, and the yin and yang energy wreaked havoc. It carried a terrifying aura and engulfed Ka Tuor. Such an attack was enough to threaten Ka Tuor. In the distance, Tyrant and the others were looking ahead. With their current combat strength, they could not cause any harm to Ka Tuor. If they wanted to kill him, they could only rely on Zi Chen. However, the attack in front of them seemed to have some hope. However, Zi Chen was not careless. The yin and yang light continued to revolve around his body. He pointed forward, and a very small yin and yang energy flashed on his fingertip. It looked like a seed. The yin and yang light flew forward and landed in the void. Then, a powerful devouring force appeared, and the surrounding power of heaven and earth was absorbed by the yin and yang light. At the same time, the yin and yang energy in Zi Chen's world began to dissipate. After the yin-yang lightning lotus, Zi Chen used his strongest attack. When he had just reached level 8, he used this attack to kill an existence who was ranked 103rd. However, he had reached level 8 for decades. He had never given up on cultivation, and his combat strength had increased. This was the first time Tyrant and the others saw Zi Chen's attack, and they were very surprised. The yin and yang light sprouted like a spiritual seed, and then it grew, turning into a two-colored lotus. This two-colored lotus was more realistic. It bloomed, and released terrifying waves of energy. At this moment, everyone felt the threat of the two-colored lotus, and their expressions changed. The clouds not far away rolled away quickly, and they were worried that they would be affected. In the violent yin and yang energy, a sword radiance appeared. The sword radiance slashed the energy, and Ka Tuor walked out. The defensive light on his armor dimmed, and he looked more or less in a sorry state. His eyes were very cold, and they were emitting cold killing intent. However, just as he walked out of the violent energy, he saw another two-colored lotus flying toward him before he could launch a counterattack. The moment he saw the lotus, his expression changed. Chapter 2883. Under the watchful eyes of Tyrant and the others, the two-colored lotus flew toward Divine General Ka Tuor. The coldness on Ka Tuor's face turned into fear in an instant. This kind of attack was a great threat to him. He roared. Divine light gushed out of his body, and a giant python appeared out of nowhere. The giant python was hundreds of meters long. It was completely made of divine power, protecting Ka Tuor. The two-colored lotus spun forward, releasing destructive power. The giant python opened its mouth, swooping down to swallow the two-colored lotus. When it got close to the ripples, it slowed down. The divine power that made up its body became unstable. The giant python hissed and dashed forward. The divine light on its body twisted violently. When it was less than 10 meters away from the two-colored lotus, a mournful cry came from heaven and earth. The divine power that had formed the giant python exploded. The scattered giant python was still surging with terrifying energy, but it couldn't get close to the two-colored lotus. Under Ka Tuor's frightened visage, the two-colored lotus came close to him, colliding with his defense. The two-colored lotus was still spinning. Every time it spun, the defensive light on his body would dim a little. If this went on, his defense would be broken. The most frightening thing was that the two-colored lotus hadn't exerted its full power yet. The frightened Ka Tuor didn't care about anything else. He poured all of his energy into the divine sword, thrusting it toward the two-colored lotus. The sword light slashed the ripples, stabbing the two-colored lotus. The yin and yang energy was no longer stable. The spinning two-colored lotus exploded. Boom! The sky shook. The yin and yang energy spread out, swallowing Ka-Tuor's body like a giant beast. Go! In the distance, Zi Chen retreated. At the same time, he didn't forget to remind Tyrant and the others. Actually, he didn't need to remind them. Tyrant and the others ran even faster. When the two-colored lotus was formed, they knew it was uncontrollable. They had already run away. The energy was still rumbling, drowning out all the sounds of the battle. The battle stopped at this moment. The poisonous fog dispersed. The ground was covered with corpses. It was a shocking scene. There were less than 10 people still standing in the sky. Among them were the sons of God. Their faces were pale. They looked forward and saw the spreading yin and yang energy in the distance. Like rolling clouds, they continued to spread out. Even though they were very far away, they still felt a strong sense of threat. Is it going to end? Ben Sen Lu looked forward, his heart filled with an indescribable hatred. If Ka-Tuor was killed, the 8 ranked divine generals would all be killed. This was obviously too different from the original plan, and the losses. Ben Sen Lu looked around and only saw corpses. There were very few living people. This loss was already so great that it was boundless. It was obvious that their last attempt had failed. Xin Lin and the others were also very unwilling, but there was nothing they could do because Zi Chen and the others were too strong. At this moment, they could only pin their hopes on Ka-Tuor. After all, he was the 83rd ranked divine general. Perhaps he could rise up and kill all of them. Imagination was beautiful, but unlike beautiful imagination, reality was often cruel. The surging energy in front of them finally dispersed. Ka-Tuor appeared. His defense had already been broken, and there were many scars on his armor, as if it had been cut by a sharp blade. His hair was disheveled, and glowing blood seeped out from the gaps in his armor. He wasn't dead yet, but he was severely wounded. The divine sword in his hand was nowhere to be seen. The divine generals further away were in an uproar. They didn't expect that even divine general Ka-Tuor wasn't a match for these people. Zi Chen looked at divine general Ka-Tuor and said, "You shouldn't have come. So, you have to die." Divine light burst out from Ka-Tuor's body, his eyes cold. Ben Sen Lu seemed to think of something, and he was about to say something. But it was too late. A black shadow silently appeared behind Ka-Tuor. The other seemed to have sensed it, and he struck back. Puff! A sharp black blade pierced his chest. Zhong Haotian was about to disappear, but Ka-Tuor's palm hit him. Although he was severely wounded, Ka-Tuor's reaction and power were still terrifying. Zhong Haotian disappeared into the darkness again. Blood streaked across the sky. At this moment, a figure was standing in the void. No one had noticed his existence. He had seen this battle from the beginning to the end. He was obviously frightened. The fighting competence of these people from the Life Star was beyond his imagination. In addition, those mist shadows were as terrifying as the rumors said. Seeing the divine generals die one by one, he stood still in the void without any change in his expression. However, after Ka-Tuor was severely wounded, his expression changed, and he was about to show himself. Isn't it inappropriate for you to show yourself in a battle between divine generals? At this moment, an indifferent voice sounded, and a person suddenly appeared in this space. It was a middle-aged man wearing a divine robe. He stood in the air, looking at the person in front of him. There was no aura surging from either of them, but this space was filled with an oppressive aura. Without a doubt, both of them were divine kings. Seems like Heaven God Pagoda battle treated Goddess Yi Qian well. There's actually a divine king here. The first divine king to hide in this space said. Before the Heaven God left, he was worried that some people would cross the line, so he sent me here to check. I didn't expect that after only 1 year, someone would want to ignore the rules, the last divine king said coldly. Don't misunderstand. I just want to protect Ka-Tuor. He's ranked 83rd, so he's naturally talented. It's easy for you to say. Then do the people on the goddess side deserve to die? In terms of talent, Ka-Tuor is nothing. Rules are rules, and they have to be obeyed. Just as the two of them were conversing, Zhong Haotian had already made his move. The conversation ended here, but the two divine kings had no intention of leaving. In the next moment, the two divine kings' expressions changed. A strange expression appeared on the face of the God King who was the first to enter this space. As for the second divine king, there was a hint of a smile in his eyes. After Zhong Haotian's attack, he was injured. Although Divine General Ka Tuor had already sensed his presence, he wasn't able to defend himself against the attack. His body fell to the ground, and he lost all signs of life. In this battle, less than 10 people from Ben Senlu's side survived. Their expressions were extremely ugly. Their hearts were bleeding. This loss was too great. Tyrant walked towards Ben Senlu, wanting to teach him a lesson. Naturally, he couldn't kill the Son of God, but there was no rule that said he couldn't beat him. However, after taking a few steps forward, Tyrant stopped. At the same time, Wang Xian'er and the others also sensed that something was amiss, and they all turned around. They saw Zi Chen standing there. Light surged from his body, and his aura became unstable. Chapter 2884. The others also noticed the change in Zi Chen's aura, and they were astonished. Soon, this astonishment turned into joy. Zi Chen was about to break through the realm. To the people on the Life Star, this was a big surprise. Breaking through the realm at this moment meant that Zi Chen's fighting strength would increase again. Now that he could injure the 83rd ranked Divine General, how strong would his fighting strength be when he reached level 9? Everybody was full of expectation. However, to Ben Senlu and the others, this was bad news. They were about to leave, as this was the last battle. Now that Zi Chen had broken through to level 9, even if they had the thought of fighting one more time, they had to give up. After all, which divine generals would they bring next time? Which divine generals would be willing to come again? It had been dozens of years since Zi Chen had returned from the battlefield. During these dozens of years, he had refined a lot of resources, and today, he had finally broken through the realm. To him, this was something worth being excited about. His aura was changing, and so was the world. This was a new metamorphosis. Seeing Zi Chen break through, Tyrant wasn't in the mood to deal with Ben Senlu and the others. Xin Lin resentfully stared ahead. She was very annoyed. Zi Chen at level 8 was terrifying enough. At level 9, Zi Chen could be considered invincible. Zi Chen closed his eyes, and the light on his body became more dazzling. On the other side, the light on the body of the god clone flickered. He also started to break through the realm. At the same time, the armor on his body also emitted a dazzling light. Then, the ranking on the armor began to change. The numbers on the armor began to jump, one by one. 102, 101, 100, 99. The numbers didn't jump fast. They just moved up one after another, but the numbers didn't stop. It could even be said that the numbers jumped rhythmically. Even the speed in the middle was the same. Previously, although Zi Chen didn't kill Ka Tuor, he had severely injured him. In the eyes of the others, it was normal for his ranking to rise again. Soon, his ranking rose to 83rd, replacing Ka Tuor's previous position. However, this was not the end. The rankings were still rising, and the speed did not slow down. Ka Tuor's rank is 83. How could his rank be higher than Ka Tuor's? Sina stared forward, his expression ugly, unable to understand. He broke through. Xavier sighed and said, he was able to injure Ka Tuor when he was at level 8. Now that he is about to reach level 9, the rules will sense his combat power and increase his ranking. If that's the case, doesn't that mean his ranking will rise a little? Sina said unwillingly. Xavier smiled bitterly. I'm afraid it's not just a little. Perhaps it's a lot. The battle was over. Those immortal generals in the distance gathered their courage and moved forward. They wanted to see an immortal general rise in rank up close. At this time, the ranking behind Zi Chen had already reached the 70th place, but it didn't stop and the numbers continued to jump. The aura surging out of his body was also becoming more and more terrifying. His true body and doppelganger stood in the air, becoming the focus of everyone's attention. Some were gnashing their teeth, some were shocked, and some were excited. The two divine kings in the dark had strange expressions on their faces when they saw the rankings change. Then, they became somewhat expectant. In the central city, all the immortal generals in the city had gathered around the proclamation of generals. They raised their heads and stared at the proclamation of generals without blinking, their faces filled with shock. After several immortal generals had died in battle last time, a large number of immortal generals had died this time, and 7 of them had died in one go. The immortal generals in the city had no idea what had happened, but they could guess that a great battle had taken place. However, for 7 immortal generals to die in a row, they couldn't help but guess at the scale of the battle. Zichen's name was very conspicuous in the center of the list of names that had disappeared. This made a few observant people wonder if this had anything to do with him. This was because all the immortal generals below him had died. Only he was still alive. Before long, the proclamation of generals shuddered, creating a new ripple. Divine General Ka Tuor's name, ranked 83rd, had been erased. This was an extremely shocking sight. It clearly meant that Divine General Ka Tuor had also died. Just when the crowd was about to cry out in alarm and a few observant people were about to spread the news, Zichen's name began to light up. His name began to jump up, one after another, neither hurriedly nor slowly, climbing up the list. At this moment, everyone understood the reason and was even more shocked. Could it be that Zichen, who was still at level 8, had killed 8 immortal generals? Everyone felt that this was inconceivable, but when his name reached the 83rd place, they had no choice but to believe it. Even if Zichen hadn't killed them alone, he definitely had something to do with it. A level 8 immortal had risen to the 83rd place. This was too inconceivable. However, the crowd quickly realized that this wasn't the end. Zichen's name was still rising at the same speed. Cries of alarm continued to ring out as Zichen's name reached the 70th place. Just when everyone thought that this was the limit, they saw Zichen's name begin to glow once more. Soon after, his level 8 strength rose to level 9. This level 9 light was extremely dazzling, but it only appeared for a few breaths before vanishing. At that moment, Zichen's name seemed the same as everyone else's. There was no special introduction to his level, which meant that he had broken through. Everyone remembered that he had only been on the ranking of generals for a few decades, yet he had actually broken through to level 9. 69, 68, 67, after breaking through to level 9, his ranking continued to rise, jumping up at a constant speed. At that moment, not only did the changes on the ranking of generals draw the attention of the divine generals, but even a few god kings in the central cities noticed it. When Zichen's name entered the top 50, the god kings began to pay attention to Zichen. Perhaps this ranking would not allow them to contend against god kings, but if they did reach god king, they would become one of the best among their peers. However, entering the top 50 was still not Zichen's limit. His ranking continued to rise, reaching the 40th place very quickly. Afterwards, it reached the 30th place. The surroundings of the ranking of generals fell silent. It was rare for someone to rise up several dozen places in a single stroke. His ranking continued to rise at a constant speed, reaching the 20th place. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they stared at the sky without blinking. They became very nervous, but at the same time, they were filled with anticipation. His ranking continued to rise. The closer he was to the front, the stronger his battle prowess would be. 19, 18, 17. When he reached the 11th place, everyone held their breaths. Among the 108 divine generals, the top 10 had a special honor. If they could reach the top 10, it would be an amazing honor. Chapter 2885. Among the 108 generals of the divine world, it was an honor to enter the rankings. However, there were different levels of honor. For example, although there was only a difference of 8 places between 108, it was obviously different. Similarly, 100 was different from 90 and 80. Relatively speaking, the most obvious boundaries were 100, 50, 20, top 10, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. At this moment, Zichen's name shot up from 103 to the 10th place. Everyone found it unbelievable. One should know that he had just advanced to level 9. Even if his fighting strength was extraordinary, How could he enter the top 10? Even some of the god kings in the central city had strange expressions on their faces. However, this wasn't the end. His ranking was still rising. Although it was an honor to enter the top 10, the additional ranking would be different every time. The crowd was no longer quiet. Cries of surprise rose and fell continuously. Zichen's ranking continued to rise. 8th, 7th, 6th. The speed was very balanced. It gave people the illusion that the ranking board was spoiled. Without leaving too much time for people to be shocked, Zichen's ranking had reached the 4th place. Any higher and he would enter the top 3. If he really entered the top 3, it would be too amazing. It would definitely cause a huge uproar in the divine world. Time was still constant. Zichen's name had reached the 3rd place without any surprise. His name was still shining. However, in everyone's eyes, it seemed to be much brighter and even more dazzling. Top 3. This was an unparalleled honor. It was an extraordinary existence. Cries of surprise rose again. Zichen's name had reached the 2nd place. Then, it was the 1st place again. Without any surprise, he broke through and became the 1st place. Everyone found it unbelievable. All the divine generals in Central City were extremely shocked. The divine kings who knew about this were also moved. This was the 1st place among the 108 divine generals. Moreover, he had just advanced to level 9. This explained a lot. It was quiet in the distance. No sound could be heard. Everyone stared at Zichen as though they were petrified. 1st place. 1st place. How was this possible? He had just reached level 9. Compared to the disbelief of the crowd, Wang Xian'er and the others were smiling. Although they were happy, they weren't surprised. Zichen was the one who defied the natural order from this life star. He was the strongest existence in this life star. Along the way, he had always swept away those at the same realm. He was the strongest. He had various trump cards, 2 clones, and a complete world. His advancement to the ranking of generals proved this point. As long as they were at the same level, he would be the strongest. There were no surprises. Zichen's breakthrough had come to an end. His doppelganger disappeared from beside him, and so did the general armor that the doppelganger was wearing. The dazzling general armor disappeared, making everyone feel as if something was missing. Zichen looked at the sons of God and said, "Are you going to do something like this again?" Ben Senlu looked at Zichen without saying anything, his face gloomy. Zichen continued, "If there are more, I'd like to trouble you to find more ranked divine generals. You know that the God realm doesn't favor us here. If you want to obtain a general armor, you can only rely on killing. I recently planned to equip everyone with general armor, so I hope you can come here often in the future." Ben Senlu was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. The other people's expressions were very good. The divine generals in the distance wanted to laugh, but they didn't dare. "Zichen, I'm not done with you." Ben Senlu coldly glanced at Zichen, then turned and left. When he had come, he had brought an army with him, but when he left, he was all alone. His back was inevitably lonely. He had lost once again. "Yi Qian, don't be too proud. There will be a day when you will regret this." Xin Lin also threw down some harsh words. She hated Zichen, but this hatred couldn't compare to the hatred she felt for Yi Qian. The two were sisters, but when they met, they were more enemies than enemies. Sina and Xavier coldly glanced at Zichen, then turned and left. The others didn't dare to look at him that way. They left in a daze. This time, their losses were too great. The final battle between the sons of God and the great families had been resolved by Zichen just like that. Zichen was now the 1st divine general. It was likely that no other divine general would dare to cause trouble here. The other divine generals also retreated. Although they still coveted the tree spirit's heart, they didn't have the courage to provoke the 1st divine general. The corpses of the divine generals sank to the ground and were taken by the misty shadow. They would keep the corpses and take out the divine rings. The battle was over, and everyone began to return. This time, they had reaped great rewards. Not to mention other things, just the 8 sets of general armor were a great harvest. The monk coveted them and wanted one, but he was looked down upon by the others. He had the strongest defense, but he still wanted armor. Was there something wrong with his head? The two divine kings hovering in midair didn't appear. After Zi Chen and the others left, they also disappeared. A hurricane swept through the god realm, caused by the changes in the ranking of generals. The armor on all the divine generals changed, releasing intense light. Then, they dropped a rank. When the divine generals ranked below 83 found out that it was an 8th-level divine general who had pushed them down, anger appeared on their faces. But even more divine generals were shocked. Among them, there was a young-looking divine general. Not only was he not shocked, he even looked surprised. This divine general was called Luo Yi. He used to be ranked 2nd, but now he was ranked 3rd. He had been to the Black Order battlefield in the 10th domain. He actually caught up so quickly. How amazing. As expected of someone favored by the heavenly gods. He sighed from the bottom of his heart. At the same time, the other divine generals were also discussing Zi Chen. The divine generals who had been pushed down were furious, but when they heard everything about Zi Chen, their anger disappeared. This was because Zi Chen's rank had risen to 1st. If it wasn't an accident, then he had the absolute strength to be 1st. One had to know that Divine General Musi used to be 1st. He had been 1st on the ranking of generals for many years, and it was said that he was only a hair's breadth away from becoming a divine king. Even Luo Yi couldn't push him down. If Zi Chen could push someone like that down, how could they dare cause trouble for Zi Chen? When Zi Chen returned to the city, Jiano and the Mother Nest knew what had happened and congratulated him. "It's time to attack," Zi Chen said to the Mother Nest. The Mother Nest spacetime creatures weren't just outside the boundless city. There were many of them in the region. The divine generals probably wouldn't attack again, so Zi Chen would attack the nearby Mother Nest. After all, the two sides had already started fighting. The void outside the forest opened up, and the spacetime creature jumped down from the void, then flew forward. This time, Zi Chen attacked with all his might. The battle had already begun, so there was no stopping. At the same time, the Mother Nest sent out an army of spacetime creatures, and the two sides engaged in a fierce battle. This battle was bound to last for a very long time. Perhaps it would take several hundred years before the victor was decided. But Zi Chen had all the time in the world. Chapter 2886. It was a divine general. On his way here, he saw the battle between the creatures from another spacetime. The scale of the battle shocked him. Standing outside the forest, he transmitted his voice loudly. "What's the matter?" A moment later, Tyrant walked out of the forest. "Where's Lord Zi Chen?" the divine general asked Tyrant. Tyrant sized him up and said, "You want to see Zi Chen? It's your good fortune to be able to see me." Tyrant's words were filled with anger. It wasn't because he was jealous of Zi Chen, but because he despised the way the heavenly realm did things. He clearly had the battle prowess to become a divine general, but those shameless fellows in the heavenly realm didn't acknowledge him. "I'm from the Kangsai family," said the divine general, his voice filled with arrogance. "If you have something to say, say it. Lord Zeng doesn't care where you're from." Tyrant said coldly, "Also, don't put on airs in front of Lord Zeng. That bastard Ben Sen Lu was almost killed by Lord Zeng last time. Who do you think you are?" The divine general looked displeased, but thinking of the previous instructions, he didn't want to argue with Tyrant. He said, "Our Kangsai family would like to invite Lord Zi Chen for a gathering." "No time." Tyrant left after saying that, leaving the divine general standing there in a daze. Tyrant went back, cursing. He was annoyed. They obviously wanted to form an alliance, but they had to act like they were superior, as if the Kangsai family was some great power. Zi Chen, Yi Chen, and the others had expected this. The heavenly realm wasn't stable now, and Zi Chen had become the number one on the ranking of generals. Naturally, the nearby powers would want to rope them in. However, this divine general seemed to be too stupid. He didn't understand Zi Chen's strength, the power the Lifestar had displayed, and the future potential. His words were filled with arrogance. Speaking of which, Zi Chen was the absolute number one in the entire heavenly realm. Who dared to compete with him at the same level? Tyrant was indignant after returning. He almost cursed out loud. Chen looked at the depressed monk and said, "I told you not to go, but you insisted. You'd better cultivate in seclusion and try to reach level 9 as soon as possible. Leave the rest to Luo Wei." After Chen returned, the others also went into seclusion. Chen had broken through to level 9, so they also needed to grow. General Luo Wei used to be part of the government, but now he was following Chen. Like Zhou Lina, he was good at dealing with people. There would definitely be more forces coming, so Luo Wei had to deal with them. While Tyrant went into seclusion, Chen was familiarizing himself with his current strength. Not long after, someone else arrived from the periphery. It was another level 9 divine general. Luo Wei went out to deal with it. He didn't invite the divine general in. Instead, he discussed things outside. In the end, the divine general left after saying something. During this time, the conversation between the two parties was quite pleasant, and there was no overbearing scene. On the battlefield, the creatures from the other spacetime were still fighting to the death. Many misty figures were outside the battlefield, dealing with the corpses that had been left behind. The situation in the 10th domain was no longer stable. The various forces formed all kinds of alliances, and there was friction between the alliances. However, the various domains had yet to go to war, so they restrained themselves. During this time, negotiations were the main focus. The news of Chen becoming the first on the ranking of generals had already spread, especially in the 10th domain. While these forces were negotiating with each other, some people extended an olive branch to Chen. The forces that dared to recruit Chen were all forces with godly kings. Only they dared to show their faces when the heavenly gods weren't around. During this time, Chen didn't meet a single person. Everyone was met by Luo Wei, and he wasn't allowed to bring them to Goddess City. This situation lasted for a full 5 years. Finally, the forces that were wary of each other couldn't take it anymore. One after another, they rose up and formed their own forces. For example, the first force to recruit Chen, the Kangsai family, controlled close to 10,000 cities. It was called the Kangsai Territory, or the Kangsai Territory. The other families and forces all followed suit. During this time, large and small battles broke out. The teleportation formation was strictly controlled, so it was very difficult to travel unhindered again. On this day, Chen received a sound transmission from Giano, saying that Luo Wei wanted him to go out. This was the first time Luo Wei had sent a sound transmission in a few years. This indicated that the person who came was a godly king. Chen flew out of the city. After walking out of the forest, he saw Luo Wei standing there respectfully. In front of Luo Wei was God King Sandini. Chen was very surprised and immediately went up to greet him. "Greetings, God King." He cupped his fists and bowed. "Chen, it's really difficult to invite you. My people have come many times, but they can't even see your face." God King Sandini smiled. "This time, I have to come personally." Chen said apologetically, "I've been in seclusion these past few years, so I haven't appeared. May I ask why God King has come personally?" God King Sandini looked around and said, "This place is too desolate, and there aren't many resources. Come with me." It was obvious that this was an attempt to recruit Chen and everyone else to join them. Chen said, "I can't make the decision on this matter. God King, you also know that this is a goddess city. Aren't you and the goddess family?" God King Sandini asked. "Yes, we are family, but I have to follow the goddess wishes. In the beginning, the goddess settled here because she didn't want to get involved in these disputes. A dozen years ago, before the god left, he asked the goddess to return once, but the goddess didn't agree. Chen awkwardly said, "So, I have to follow the goddess wishes. I hope God King can understand." God King Sandini looked at Chen and said, "No one can avoid conflict, and running away is not the solution. Isn't there still a war going on here? If we can't avoid it, we can only fight. But we definitely won't take the initiative to start a conflict. Just like how the God realm doesn't recognize us, we won't fight for it, and even choose to avoid it." Chen said. "The God realm doesn't recognize you? What do you mean?" Sandini slightly frowned. Chen said, We have a dozen general armors here, but I'm the only one with a ranking. It's clear that the God realm doesn't recognize us. You're talking about this matter? Perhaps there's some misunderstanding. God King, there's no need to mind. I'm just casually mentioning it. In this remote place, general armors are actually useless. Zichen said, recently, I've had an epiphany regarding battle skills. If God King doesn't have anything else to say, forgive Zichen for not staying any longer. I don't want to miss this opportunity and have regrets. After saying that, Zichen turned around and left. After bowing to the God King, Luo Wei also left with Zichen. God King Sandini stared at the departing Zichen and frowned. Your Excellency, is this appropriate? On the way back, Luo Wei asked, clearly referring to Zichen's attitude toward the God King. There's nothing inappropriate about it. Chapter 2887. Zichen looked at Luo Wei and said, when the next God Kings come, tell them I'm in seclusion because I had a sudden epiphany. Okay. Luo Wei nodded. Zichen had brought back a lot of resources from the Black Order battlefield. He had given them to Monk and the others for them to refine and break through quickly. Of the thousands of people who had come with Jolena, some were cultivating while others were training in the Mother Nest space. To them, the Mother Nest's existence was no longer a secret. Over the years, there had been a steady stream of cultivators coming from the Lifestar and entering the training grounds to grow. Although this place was called Goddess City, most of the people were from the Lifestar. Zichen had always wanted to talk to Yi Qian. If she wanted to train some of her own people, she could open a teleportation formation to the endless starfields. However, Yi Qian was always in seclusion and Zichen couldn't find a good time to talk to her. Almost all the factions in the God realm had areas to train new people. These new people were all picked from the endless starfields. The situation in the 10th domain became more tense. Battles broke out frequently. The God Kings would restrain themselves and wouldn't fight easily. The God Generals and God Envoys became the main fighting force. Under such circumstances, Zichen's role was highlighted. As the number one on the list of generals, as long as he joined the battle, it would be a great boost to the morale of the troops. Moreover, everyone knew that Zichen was not the only one who was powerful. He had a group of powerful warriors around him. Among them, there were several level 8 warriors who could fight against level 9 divine generals. They were powerful existences in the outside world. At the same time, Zichen controlled the Mother Nest. It was like he had an endless army from another dimension. At the same time, he had the almost immortal Misty Shadow. This was a force that no one dared to underestimate. Recently, there had been a saying in the 10th domain that whoever got Zichen would be the final victor. Unfortunately, Zichen didn't join any faction. He just kept fighting the creatures from another dimension. This caused many forces to be dissatisfied, but at the same time, they also let out a sigh of relief. This way, they could still restrict each other. However, if Zichen chose to join a faction, the other factions would choose to ally with him. In this wasteland, the battle between the space-time creatures was very fierce. During this period of time, the battle was constantly advancing. One day, Luo Wei returned from the forest and saw Zichen standing in the middle of the city. He asked, "Sir, should we attack the nearby general-class Mother Nest?" Zichen shook his head. Now was not the time for an all-out war. It didn't matter if he was strong alone. Only when the people around him were strong together would the entire force grow stronger. Now, what he needed was more people. Only then would he have a stronger force, and only then would he truly have a foundation in the God realm. Just like now, although there was no threat to Zichen in this area, Zichen did not have the manpower to open up another city. Zichen, 2 more tree spirits have awakened. Giano's voice rang in Zichen's mind. As Giano grew, the ancient trees in the periphery would awaken their souls and become tree spirits. When the tree spirits fully matured, they would become the new kings. After so many years, Giano had almost 10 tree spirits by his side. Now that 2 more tree spirits had awakened, the number clearly exceeded 10. The only awkward thing was that Zichen did not have a place to arrange for these tree spirits to grow. Like before, let's accumulate energy first. When Yi Qian comes out, we'll discuss the matter of expanding the city. Every tree spirit could protect a city, just like how Gyano protected Goddess City. Where these tree spirits grew, there would inevitably be a new city. This was equivalent to Fallen City, so Zichen needed to listen to everyone's opinions. When everyone came out, they would have reached level 9. At that time, there would be many strong people, and they would have the strength to oversee other cities. During this time, Zichen was not only nurturing strong people, but also nurturing new people with potential in the areas of spirit array masters, blacksmiths, and alchemists. As time passed, as the battle in the 10th domain continued, more God Kings personally came to find Zichen, wanting to recruit him to join the battle. Zichen did not meet anyone other than God King Sandini. In the other 9 domains, there were also many battles, and one faction after another rose up. It could be said that with the departure of the heavenly gods, the structure of the 10 domains had changed, and one region after another appeared in the 10 domains. Among them, the official faction could not be ignored. They used to represent the government led by the 9 heavenly gods, but now they represented themselves. One after another, the higher-ups jumped out and formed their own factions. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed, and in these 10 years, there were constantly people coming to recruit Zichen. Zichen was unmoved. When the second 10 years came, the number of people recruited decreased, but the battles did not stop. When the third 10 years came, it seemed that everyone had forgotten about Zichen, the number 1 on the ranking of generals, and neglected this place. In the following 10 years, no one came here again, as if everyone had neglected this place. When the 7th 10 years came, Su Mengyaro was the first to break through to level 9, and in the following period of time, everyone broke through one after another. When the 8th 10 years came, the main forces belonging to the Life Star had all reached level 9. At the same time, Yi Qian and Li Ari also reached level 9. For everyone, this was a joyous occasion. After that, they used another 10 years to familiarize themselves with and stabilize their realms. 90 years had passed, and everyone came out of seclusion one after another. It was finally time to discuss the matter of landing the city. During these years, another tree spirit had awakened. The reason why it was so fast was because the battle between the creatures from another dimension had never stopped. Every day, large amounts of corpses would be transported into the forest. Whether it was the fog shadow or the ancient trees, they all grew very quickly. Just as they were discussing which direction to land the city, another divine king came from the outside world that had not been visited for decades. However, this time, not only did Zichen walk out, but Yi Qian also followed. This was because the divine king came from the 9th region, and he was sent by the heavenly god. Greetings, goddess. Zichen walked out with Yi Qian, and the divine king said, "Congratulations, goddess, for breaking through. Congratulations, Lord Zichen, for becoming the first divine general. Why are you looking for me?" Yi Qian asked. "Before the heavenly god left, he prepared something for you, goddess. He said that when you reach level 9, I should deliver it to you," the divine king said. "What is it?" Yi Qian asked, puzzled. "A teleportation token." The divine king took out a token. The token shone with divine light and emitted an ancient aura. "What is this for?" "This is the key to the divine king celestial domain. It can enter the divine king celestial path. After passing through the divine king celestial path, you will reach the divine king celestial domain. The divine king celestial domain is where the divine kings gather. More than 60% of the divine kings in the divine world are there." Chapter 2888. Before the god of heaven left, he had already made arrangements. Yi Qian took the teleportation token, not knowing what to feel. The god king who gave the token rejected Zichen's invitation and didn't stay for long. The so-called God King Heaven Domain and God King Path of Heaven were said to be the core area created by the 9 great gods. Most of the God Kings in the divine world gathered there. However, those God Kings were all in the God King Heaven Domain. Level 9 God Generals would appear on the God King Path of Heaven and eventually reach the God King Heaven Domain. Zichen and Yi Qian returned to the city. This teleportation token was an opportunity left by the pagoda battle god for goddess Yi Qian. Of course, It was also for Zi Chen and the entire Life Star. Before leaving, the God King said that this opportunity wasn't available to everyone. The God King path of heaven would only open to the 10 regions of the divine world during special times. At other times, only the God of heaven could open it. All level 9 experts could go, but Zi Chen couldn't let everyone go. This place wasn't stable at the moment and needed someone to guard it. Soon, Tyrant and the others knew about the existence of the teleportation token. Their minds became active. Of course, they were happy to become level 9 ancestor generals. However, it wasn't as flashy as becoming a God King. In the entire divine world, only those who reached the God King level could have a foothold. Therefore, if the Life Star wanted to develop a force that would never fall, at least one God King would be needed. The God of Heaven had just left for 100 years. There was still a long way to go before he returned. During this period, Zi Chen naturally had to rely on himself. Choosing the right person was a difficult problem because this was an opportunity given by the God of Heaven. It wasn't suitable to let anyone stay. Besides, there were also some level 8 experts who weren't far from level 9. It was also a problem whether to wait or not. Therefore, Zi Chen called all the main forces of the Life Star over. Among them, there were a few level 8 experts who were just a step away from level 9. Zi Chen needed to hear their opinions. Zi Chen told them the function of the teleportation token. Then, he looked at them and said, "If you have any ideas, please tell me." The level 8 experts looked at each other and shook their heads. "We are level 8 experts. We don't have any ideas. We won't go if we don't have enough levels." Wuji said, "It's not realistic for everyone to go. I will stay." Qing Enyu held Wuji's arm and said, "I'll stay too." She was following Wuji. Wherever Wuji went, she would follow. "I'm already old, so I can't do these kinds of things anymore. You guys should do it. I'll leave behind the connecting device and train some new people. It's good for me to enjoy my old age." The one who spoke was the craftsman ancestor. Although he had always been refining tools was also a Dao, so his cultivation level had increased very quickly. In fact, the craftsman ancestor had always been the strongest expert on the Life Star. "I'm not going either." It was LV Peng who had the highest attainment in formations on this Life Star. He needed to stay here to guard in case something unexpected happened. At the same time, he had to train new spirit array masters. Anyway, this was the shortcoming of the Life Star. Besides the level 9 warriors like them, there were many more warriors with potential in this area. With enough resources, they could break through to level 9 shortly. At that time, the overall fighting competence of this Life Star would increase tremendously. For example, the 4 sacred beasts, Divine General Yin Zhong, and other experts. The matter was decided. Going to the ancient road of God Kings was Zi Chen, the Tyrant, the Devil Ape, Zhong Haotian, the 2 Longhu Supremes, the 2 Flying Divine Tigers, Lei Long, Tu Long, the 4 girls, the 4 Heaven's Chosen Ones, Yi Qian, and Li Ari. Before leaving, Zi Chen left behind a few sets of general armors. These general armors were used for defense and also for the craftsman ancestor to study and see if he could forge weapons suitable for the cultivators on this Life Star. The day before he decided to leave, Zi Chen walked out of his room and went to the center of the city. Then, he soared into the sky. A space appeared there, and Zi Chen disappeared into that space. Master. In this space, the broodmother's body was huge, almost like a city. Its body was so huge that it looked clumsy and couldn't move. In fact, it was not so. The light of space rules flashed on the surface of its body. It could disappear at any time. Zi Chen stood there and looked at the mother nest. 2 more lights appeared next to him. They were Giano in human form and the Misty Shadow King. "It will take a long time for us to come back. I called you here to tell you about the future development of this city," said Zi Chen. "Are we going to expand?" asked Giano. Zi Chen shook his head and said, "No, we are going to suppress our strength." Suppress our strength. Giano looked at Zi Chen confusedly. The Misty Shadow King and the Mother Nest didn't say anything. The situation in the divine realm is uncertain. The danger is not over yet. It's not good to be too strong at this time. Moreover, after we leave, there will be no goddess to guard this place. It's inevitable that some people will have other thoughts. Zichen said, so, you must not expand. Accumulate all the resources and wait for us to come back. If there is a crisis on the way, immediately retreat if you can, even if you have to give up this place. Of course, before you retreat, remember to destroy the teleportation formation or hide it. Zichen continued, Tree Spirit cannot be lost. It will be our foundation in the future. Unless it is necessary, do not make the decision to sacrifice the mother nest. Also, Misty Shadow, avoid dangerous battles and don't have any casualties. If there is an expert, retreat. In everyone's opinion, Misty Shadow was powerful and undying. But in fact, it was not. Misty Shadows could die in battle. Over the years, some Misty Shadows had died, but no one knew that they had died. Apart from that, if the enemy was too strong, then the Misty Shadow would be killed the moment it appeared. So, Misty Shadows were not immortal. Even if there was no corresponding rule, as long as one had unimaginable fighting strength, they could still kill Misty Shadows. For example, it was not difficult for divine kings to kill Misty Shadows. But without the corresponding rule, even if they killed Misty Shadows, they would not see it. As for the other Misty Shadows, they would quickly collect the corpses of their companions. Apart from LV Peng and the others, with the three of them here, Zichen was relieved. The three of them nodded, indicating that there was no problem. The next day, everyone gathered in Zichen's room. Then, Yi Qian took out the teleportation talisman and poured her divine power into it. A ray of light was released from the teleportation talisman. Then, the light enveloped everyone and they disappeared. Chapter 2889. As far as the eye could see, the mountain ranges in the distance were majestic and magnificent. The aura here was somewhat oppressive, but it wasn't strong. They soon got used to it. This is the ancient road of the Divine King? I thought it was just a road. Tyrant looked around and said aloud. Where should we go next? The devil ape looked at Zichen, which was a habitual action. When they didn't have any ideas, they were used to Zichen making the decision. Zichen was also at a loss since it was his first time here. He looked at Yi Qian inquiringly. Yi Qian shook her head and said, the token doesn't have any directions. Thus, they had no choice but to find a random direction and move forward. At this moment, Su Mengyao's gentle voice sounded, there might be danger in the east. Let's go to the west. Su Mengyao's art of divination could be said to be the best on the Life Star. Everyone had absolute trust in Su Mengyao. They walked to the west. I wonder what kind of danger could break Lord Zeng's defense. Tyrant murmured to himself. Since he got the shield, Tyrant was most confident in his defense. Whenever he saw something that could attack, he would want to test the defense of his light shield. Everyone chose to ignore his murmur. Yi Qian retracted her gaze and turned to look at Zichen, saying, did you notice that there is no vegetation in the mountains nearby? Zichen nodded. It was normal to say that there was no vegetation in one mountain. However, it didn't make sense that there was no vegetation in all the mountains, not even a single blade of grass. During this time, Zichen scanned the surroundings with his spiritual thoughts and didn't find anything unusual. After walking for about 2 hours, Zichen's spiritual thoughts found something. He said, there is something in front of us. Let's go check it out. The group flew forward. A few miles away, they saw a huge beast covered in yellow scales. Its mouth was very long, and it had a crocodile tail. Its 4 limbs were thick and powerful. At this moment, it was gnawing on the rocks at the foot of the mountain. When the rocks entered its mouth, crunching sounds could be heard. After chewing, it swallowed them into its stomach. Seeing this, everyone was surprised and stared at the front. Tyrant said with a smile, not a single blade of grass grows on these mountains. Did this guy eat everything that grew there? Now that there's nothing to eat, they've started to gnaw on rocks. The joke wasn't funny at all. The giant beast turned around when it heard the sound. Its eyes were black, but after seeing them, they slowly turned red, becoming more and more brutal. Very aggressive. Lord Zeng likes it. Looking at this scene, Tyrant was pleasantly surprised. With a flash of light in his hand, a light shield appeared. He grabbed the shield of light and dashed forward. The light of Buddha surrounded his body, and the light shield released a bright golden light, forming a defense. 2 streams of white smoke came out of the strange giant beast's nose. Its eyes were completely red as it began to charge forward. A rumbling sound came from the earth. This giant beast seemed to be extremely heavy, and waves of smoke and dust were sent flying everywhere. The people at the back stared at the charging giant beast in front of them. It was as if they were looking at a rapidly moving mountain. Pang! A tremor came from the front, and a ripple spread out in all directions. The monk's body was sent flying like a stone, smashing into the ground several hundred feet away. His body fell to the ground, leaving a deep mark on the ground. Such a scene shocked everyone. This giant beast was able to send the monk flying. It seemed to be quite strong. After sending the monk flying, the giant beast rushed over. Zhong Haotian, who was beside Zi Chen, disappeared. The devil ape and Lei Ting rushed forward. Both of them were wearing general armor. The black rod in the devil ape's hand glowed, and the runes on it lit up. A powerful force surged and smashed forward. The giant beast didn't dodge and was hit by the rod. It could even be said that it crashed into the rod itself. The sound of metal clashing rang out, and sparks flew everywhere. The devil ape was sent flying. The scales on the giant beast's head shattered, and blood flowed out. Buzz! The power of lightning wrapped around his body like chains. Lei Ting stabbed forward with his spear, and the tip of the spear created ripples. The power of tremors spread out, and the spear in Lei Ting's hand was sent flying. The giant beast crashed into his chest, and the lightning chains on his body instantly disappeared. He was sent flying. When the people at the back saw this, their expressions changed drastically. One had to know that these people had the strength to fight against divine generals. They were even ranked at the top. At this moment, in front of this giant beast of unknown origin, they didn't have the slightest advantage. Zhong Haotian silently appeared beside the giant beast, and the long spike in his hand immediately pierced towards the giant beast's eyes. Puff! The long spike completely sank into the giant beast's eyes. The giant beast turned its head and crashed into Zhong Haotian, sending him flying. Lei Ting and the devil ape had already witnessed the giant beast's powerful defense. Zhong Haotian naturally wanted to attack its vital points. The short spike pierced into the eyes and into the brain. If this happened to any living being, it would be a fatal situation. However, the giant beast didn't die. Instead, it went berserk. A ripple of light appeared around its body, spreading out in all directions. The pressure in the air suddenly increased. It was as if everyone was carrying a mountain on their backs. Their movements immediately became sluggish. Under this pressure, the giant beast didn't slow down. Instead, it sped up. Buzz! The power of yin and yang coiled around Zi Chen's body. His physical strength was fully activated, and he took a step forward. As he moved forward, the ground shook. It was as if he was really walking with a mountain on his back. When the giant beast came close, Zi Chen slapped it with his palm. Boom! With a loud boom, the power of yin and yang dispersed in all directions. A few scales were shattered. Zi Chen's palm was tightly pressed against the giant beast's head. The powerful force pushed his body back, leaving behind 2 trails of smoke. Ha! Zi Chen's body flashed again. The 9th level power of yin and yang was fully unleashed. All the power gathered in his hands. In the next moment, he hugged the giant beast's head and exerted his strength. Golden light flashed. The giant beast's huge body left the ground and fell backward with a loud boom. When the people nearby saw this scene, their faces were filled with shock. Compared to this giant beast, Zi Chen was more like a giant beast. The giant beast was thrown to the ground by Zi Chen. Then, he flashed forward and punched the giant beast's head again and again. Golden light sputtered continuously. The vibration was so loud that it spread far and wide. A person flew over from afar. However, he didn't get close. When he saw the scene in front of him from afar, he opened his mouth in shock. It was as if he had seen a monster. The loud boom continued and the golden light scattered. The giant beast's body kept trembling. Its originally red eyes gradually turned black and finally lost their luster. After a few dozen punches, the giant beast stopped moving. It was dead. Chen killed it with his fists. Chapter 2890. A divine general stood in the distance. He looked at Chen, who kept throwing punches. He was so shocked that he was almost petrified. The fist light smashed down, and the light sputtered. It was as if something heavy had hit his heart. He had been on the Divine King's path for a long time, but he had never seen such a fierce existence who could kill the crocodile tail stone eater with just a punch. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. But even so, he still couldn't accept it. At this moment, the surrounding temperature suddenly dropped, and a bone-chilling chill came from the front. He shuddered and came to his senses. He saw that the divine general who killed the crocodile tail stone eater had stood up and was looking at him. The general's expression was calm, but he felt a chill. He hurriedly said, "Don't misunderstand. I mean no harm." Monk and the others looked at him without saying anything. "I heard the commotion and came here. I mean no harm. I haven't seen you before. You must have just arrived here, right?" The 9th level general said again. Chen looked at the general and said, "We did just arrive here." The 9th level general said, "You're new here, so you're not familiar with this place. Why don't you follow me back to the camp? Otherwise, it'll be very dangerous if you rush in recklessly." "Camp?" Chen looked at him with a puzzled expression. "This area is where the divine generals gather. Once there are more people, it becomes a camp. In fact, it's just a gathering place. When everyone gathers together, they'll be stronger." The divine general glanced at the dead beast under Chen's feet and said, "I'm Johnny. I didn't expect you to be so powerful when you just arrived here. You can even kill the crocodile tail stone eater." Chen clearly saw the envy in Johnny's eyes. He said, "I'm Chen. This crocodile tail stone eater has strong defense and strength. What's special about it?" Johnny said enviously, "You can exchange it for a low-grade armor in Luke City." "Low-grade armor?" A strange look flashed in the eyes of the others. The crocodile tail stone eater had strong defense and was hard to kill. They wondered what the so-called armor was. Johnny's gaze fell on Lei Ting and the others. "It's this kind of armor. In the divinity world, it's called ranked battle armor. Here, it's called low-rank battle armor. It's said that the divinity world's battle armor is brought out from here." Hearing this, Chen and the others were shocked. Before leaving, Chen had left behind a few sets of armor. On the one hand, they could be used to protect everyone in a crisis, and on the other hand, he wanted the craftsman ancestor to see if he could forge them. At that time, the craftsman ancestor had raised a very important issue: materials. Among the materials they had on this life star, it was impossible to forge such a defensive armor. Even the giant crocodile that was with the misty shadow had an extremely strong defense, but it still couldn't compare to 1/10 of the general armor. Looking at the strange look in their eyes, Johnny said, "If you have nowhere to go, why don't you follow me back to the camp? That way, you can have a better understanding of this place." Chen put away the crocodile stoniator's corpse and looked at Johnny. "Then I'll have to trouble you, brother Johnny." Johnny smiled and said, "We can benefit each other. With you joining us, our forces can also grow stronger." Johnny led the group to the west. "What forces?" asked Chen. Johnny explained, "This area is very dangerous. If a divine general moves alone, the possibility of danger is very high. In order to survive, everyone chose to form an alliance. When there are more people, the alliance becomes a force." Chen asked in surprise, "Are there many forces in this area?" Johnny shook his head and said, "Not many, only 3. They are the forces of Luo Bu, Dela, and Huiqi. These 3 forces are named after the strongest. I'm from Luo Bu's force, and Dela is the strongest among the 3. We're about the same as Huiqi." Hearing Johnny's words, Chen was even more puzzled. "Isn't this the Divine King Heavenly Road? Isn't it said that the Divine King Heavenly Domain is at the end? Why stop?" Johnny smiled bitterly and said, "If you want to enter the Divine King Heavenly Domain, you must have the strength of a Divine King. How can it be so easy to become a divine king? The danger here is far beyond your imagination. To the divine generals who come here, survival is the most important thing. Take the crocodile-tailed stone-eater from before as an example. One is easy to deal with, but what if a group comes? Everyone imagined a group of crocodile-tailed stone-eater charging at them. The earth trembled, dust rose, and a powerful force surged. Just thinking about it made them shudder. It was the first time Chen came here, so he didn't know much about this world. Joining a force was a good idea, so he asked Johnny how many people there were in his force. Johnny told him that there were more than 200 people. It must be known that those who could come here were all level 9 divine generals. More than 200 people was not a small number. Johnny explained everything about this world to them along the way. All the life forms in this world are very useful to divine generals. For example, Chen, when you killed the crocodile-tailed stone-eater, you can break open its body and take out its heart to refine it. This can increase the strength of your body. Eating its flesh could increase one's blood chi and make one's life force more vigorous. If you bring its bones and scales to Luke City, you can exchange them for a low-grade battle armor. The monk next to him heard and said, "In that case, isn't this thing's entire body a treasure?" Johnny said, "Not only it, but all the life forms here are treasures. Even, including the plants that grow on the mountain peaks." Everyone was puzzled. The mountain rocks here are comparable to fine gold. Plants that can break through the rocks are definitely not ordinary. Johnny said, "There has always been a saying that the divine king's path of heaven is the path to the core of the divine realm. It is said that there are 9 such paths, but no one has been able to prove it." The encampment that Johnny mentioned was not far away. After walking for about 1,000 miles, they saw a small camp. The camp was on top of a few connected mountain peaks, and they could see many buildings. At this time, there were some divine generals cultivating in various parts of the mountain peaks. When Johnny brought Chen and the others back, these divine generals opened their eyes. Bringing back 20 people at once was obviously a rare sight. While they were in shock, their gazes fell on the few ladies in the crowd one after another. In this group of 20 people, there were 6 ladies in total. Each of them was extremely beautiful, with beautiful faces and slender figures. They competed with each other in terms of beauty, and immediately attracted everyone's attention. In a place like this, there were divine generals, but they were rare. It was even rarer to see one with unparalleled beauty. But when they saw the shining battle armor in the group, they could only suppress their other thoughts. "Johnny, you're back." Just then, a figure of light appeared. Brother Luo Bu looking at the divine general who appeared, a smile appeared on Johnny's face.